we also issued our statement responding to those unfortunate and disgusting remarks made by Mr. Mtolo. You will recall that as the National Education, Health and Allied Workers Union, we have been in the forefront raising some issues in this department. For instance, if you go to Home Affairs, SASA, Department of Labor, you find that the workers are working under pressure on the basis of the understaffing that is there in the public service as a result of the imposed austerity measures. You also, at the same time, have got a problem on the state of infrastructure. If you go to SASA, workers does not have even decent places where they can perform their duties. Same applies to Department of Labor. Here in Durban, the building where the labor inspectors are working is not even in compliance with the Occupational Health and Safety Act. If you go to Home Affairs, the systems are always down as a result of IT problems. If you go to health, severely understaffing, no ambulance, the shortage of ambulances, a shortage of cars that are also that are meant to.
So you blame this on the shortage of resources, but do you think that Mtolo's comments are a fair representation of the situation, or is this perhaps a case of scapegoating?
No, those remarks are for someone who have got no appreciation of the state of the public service after the sacrifice that workers go through in order to be able to service the community. You remember the sacrifice of workers during the pandemic COVID-19, more especially in public health. The work that workers did, even the President of the Republic continued to appreciate them. But we said even to the President, you can't appreciate workers, but in the past years we have not given them a decent salary increase, including appreciating the role that they played in fighting against the deadly virus. There's no one in the right state of mind who can say the crises that are there in the public service are because of workers. The crises that are there in the public service is because of government implementing the austerity measures, which is part of the neoliberal crisis.
All right, that's where we got to leave it. Unfortunately, that was Nahau KZN Provincial Secretary Ayanda Zulu. Now, we attempted to contact the ANC and KZN for their response to the situation, but they declined to comment. Additionally, we invited the ANC KwaZulu-Natal Secretary Beckham Mtolo to share his perspective, but he's expected to be interviewed by my colleague Stephen Grootes later this morning. So you've got to be on the lookout for that interview. So stay tuned on SAFM. That's where we got to leave it from the team this morning. Tracy Boomgard, Tapelo Sibanyoni and Morumu Kakana. Our senior producer Ronald Piri, technical producer Tumelo Mosinyochi, and executive producer Vutsila Kota. I'm Elvis Preston. We'll see you tomorrow morning, same time, same place. Ciao for now. Arrivederci.
In our top stories, AfriForum set to challenge Hlophe's election to the JSC and probe looking into alleged misconduct of suspended judge. Good morning. Lobby group AfriForum has filed papers before the Constitutional Court against the designation of impeached Western Cape Judge President John Hlophe to serve on the Judicial Services Commission. Dr. Hlophe was elected to serve on the JSC for the MK party earlier this month, despite his impeachment as a judge earlier this year. Zoleka Kodashe reports.
AfriForum is seeking direct access to the Apex Court over Hlophe's appointment to the Judicial Service Commission. AfriForum wants the court to declare the appointment unlawful and inconsistent with the National Assembly's constitutional duties. Among others, AfriForum relies on Section 165, subsections 3 and 4 of the Constitution, which prescribe that no person or organ of state may interfere with the functioning of the courts, and that organs of state, through legislative and other measures, must assist and protect the courts to ensure the independence, impartiality, dignity, accessibility, and effectiveness of the courts.
Evidence leader at the probe looking into the alleged misconduct of suspended Judge Tintswalo Makubele has argued that she was aware of the conflict of interest that would arise from her appointment as chairperson of PRASA and as a judge of the Gauteng High Court. Advocate Dorian Pava delivered closing arguments before the Judicial Conduct Tribunal looking into a complaint against Makubele lodged by civic organisation #UniteBehind. It alleges she violated the separation of powers principle by being both a judge and chairperson of the Interim Board of Control.
There can be no mistaking that. Acting in terms of Section 174, subsection 6 of the Constitution, that Judge Makubele was appointed as a judge. The respondent had the duty upon permanent appointment to immediately sever all professional links and organize her personal business affairs to minimize conflicts of interest, as required by Article 12 of the Code of Judicial Conduct. This she did not do. Madam Justice Makubele could hardly have been blind to the potential conflict of interest between her role as a judge in the Gauteng North Division and her role as chairperson of IBOC.
Non-profit organisation, the Tsenuani Farisane Foundation, has called for political parties implicated in the VBS matter to repay the money. Former ANC Provincial Treasurer Denim Siza, along with former CEO Andile Ramabunga, former Treasurer Poppy Makurubwane and former non-executive members Ernest Nesane and Paul Magula had their pre-trial hearing postponed to the 14th of next month at the High Court in Pretoria. They face charges of fraud, corruption, money laundering and racketeering. The foundation CEO, Kenny Matiba.
The statement calls on those who says they're the leader of society. Firstly, the African National Congress. We now understand that monies were channeled through other institutions that Matozi created and paid for service providers. There is the South African Communist Party. If the 3 million or 2 million that has found its way into the coffers, or not directly into the coffers, but paid for services that were rendered.
The Northwest University local government expert Arthur Shupola says the recycling of senior managers in struggling municipalities in the province will hamper service delivery. Shupola says municipalities should be professionalized to improve service delivery. This comes after the Lichtenburg-based Ditsobotla local municipality recently appointed the municipal manager. Shupola explains.
The issue of professionalization of local government is also attached to what the NDP says. We have to create attractive local government systems. So in a situation where we recycle people with clouds hanging over their heads, appointing them to different municipalities, I doubt it will contribute towards building sustainable local government and attractive local government, as the NDP instruct us to do.
A South African immigrant in the United States has been sentenced to 226 years for the first-degree murders of 2 Alaska Native women who had gone missing in 2019. 53-year-old Brian Stephen Smith of Queenstown in the Eastern Cape received 99 years for the murder of 30-year-old Kathleen Jo Hendry and 52-year-old Veronica Abuchuk in Alaska's capital, Anchorage. An additional 28 years were imposed related to sexual assault and tampering with evidence charges. Showan Price-Peace reports.
Smith became a naturalized U.S. citizen shortly before the torture and killing of Henry at a hotel in Anchorage in September 2019. He'd also been charged with a fatal shooting more than a year earlier of Abuchuk. Authorities said at the time that the location Smith gave police for disposing of her remains matched the wooded site north of Anchorage, where Alaska state troopers recovered her skull with a gunshot wound in April of 2019. Smith was identified through his strong South African accent on the torture video, which was discovered on a digital camera card and turned over to the police.
Recapping the top story, evidence leader, the probe looking into the alleged misconduct of suspended judge Tinswalo Makubele has argued that she was aware of the conflict of interest that would arise from her appointment as chairperson of PRASA and as a judge of the Gauteng High Court. For SAFM News, I'm Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, soccer news, Frenchman Romain Folz has joined Mamelodi Sundowns coaching team, and we're building up to the Olympics, 3 days to go, and South African discus thrower Victor Hogan excited to realize his lifelong dream of becoming an Olympian. All these stories and more just before 6:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Lenasia is open today. No major problems. The N12 in from Protea Glen is flowing normally, and the link roads from Lenasia up to and from the N12 are also open with normal flows as well. What we are tracking is some protesting blocking the R34 between Mpangeni and Ndundulu. So if you're on your way between Mpangeni and Melmoth, you're not going to get through at this stage. We understand it's a taxi protest and the road is blocked pretty much halfway between Mpangeni and Ndundulu is the location of that protest. So good idea to travel later once the authorities have been able to get in and negotiate and clear away the obstruction. And then Cape Town, it's already pretty heavily backed up. The flooding is still with us on the N1 inbound. It'll be a rerun of yesterday's. Your lineup already coming through from Belleville, from Plattekloof Hill territory. The traffic is thick right through to that flooding area, which is just before the Sable Road exit. If you like, it's in front of Canal Walk. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne. SAFM Sunrise starts now.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
8 minutes after 6, good morning. Welcome to SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Glad you're with us on this Tuesday morning, and already the news agenda moving quite quickly. It was interesting to watch and listen to President Cyril Ramaphosa's big speech yesterday. In the morning, unusual for Parliament, but he was speaking, of course, responding to the debate around his opening of Parliament address. And what was interesting for me about it is that the President once or twice, not very often, has sort of, I suppose they call it clap back or responded directly to claims that have been made about him personally. And yesterday was another day, and I've been looking for the right phrase, and all the headlines are using the phrase slap down of Julius Malema, and I think maybe that is the right phrase. And I think that is maybe what he said, what he did yesterday, because he kept telling Julius Malema, the leader of the EFF, to play the ball and not the man. And he kept saying, you play the man. You accuse me of being a sellout, but you should actually go and read the history of the National Union of Mine Workers. And, we all know that Cyril Ramaphosa, the president, played a big role in creating that union and everything that happened after that. But Malema, he's essentially saying, doesn't know his history. It's quite a big thing to say, particularly about someone like Malema, who talks about history all the time. And it was just interesting, and I sort of wondered if this maybe is an indication that Ramaphosa is feeling very sort of confident to respond in quite that way. Quite a sort of fresh approach to be so direct. And, if you're Malema, it's quite tricky. You've promised not to disrupt Parliament, right? There are rules that say you can't do it. So now you've got to sit there and take it. And I think John Steenhuisen's been in that position once or twice as well, where you sort of have to take it. And that's all it is. And the cameras will look for you. And I wondered sort of, what it would have been like in Parliament to watch that play out, or in the Cape Town City Hall. It's very interesting just to see the president sort of so direct. And he also said, I thought this was important, that his government, the government of national unity, as he calls it, will protect the independence of institutions, including media freedom and freedom of speech. This is, in a way, everything is really about the independence of institutions. Is the NPA making decisions independently? For the moment, it really does look like it is. Maybe for the first time, or perhaps ever, depending on how you look at things in our country. But it really does look like it is. Talking of the NPA, trying to make as much progress as it can on VBS. And Danny Msiza yesterday, you heard in the bulletin, the former treasurer of the ANC in Limpopo, he wants to separate his trial from everyone else who's accused of wrongdoing in VBS. And the NPA seems to be suggesting, well, actually, he's just trying to delay things. So very interesting. I mean, I don't see why, if people are charged with the same crime for doing the same thing, a trial would be separated. I'm sure the lawyers will come up with an interesting argument. Developments, of course, in the city of Joburg. Kabelo Gwamanda, it does look now like his days are numbered as the mayor of Joburg. The ANC in Joburg saying he'll resign by August.
I suppose the question then is by the 1st of August or by the 31st of August. It does seem there's a deal with Action SA. And I mean, Action SA has said time and time and time again it would never get into a coalition with the ANC. Herman Mashaba has said time and time and time and time and time and time and time again that he got into politics to remove the ANC from power. I mean, even after the election, he said that the government of national unity was led by the criminal ANC, and here he is working with them. I must say, the conspiratorial part of me wonders if the ANC in Gauteng is just trying to weaken the DA because they don't want to be forced to go into a coalition with the DA by the national ANC. But that's just the conspiratorial side of me. Daily Maverick has a story this morning. Ferret Haffiji, I thought this was important. They say that George Majila, who is the leader of the ANC's region in Tshwane, actually said, and this is on court papers it seems, this is coming from the DA finance head, basically said to her that if you try and tighten the regulations about who's allowed to work for the city in removing waste, removing rubbish, we will collapse the city. We will collapse the government. We will remove you from power. And the sort of claim then, what follows from that, which Majila denies, I must say, is that the ANC in Tshwane is sort of benefiting from business deals involving rubbish removal. And that's an important claim. It's a serious claim that's being made there. And it's very interesting. And by the way, in a sort of unrelated story, but related, the mayor of Tshwane, the DS Elia Brink, says they're spending 450 million rand a year on water tankers because the water systems are so bad. There's money here, eh? I mean, 450 million rand. There's huge money here. An interesting comment yesterday by the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Commissioner. This was in News 24. And Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi was once the acting National Police Commissioner. I don't know if you know that. A long, long time ago. And he was talking to neighbourhood watch organisations in KZN. And what happened was 3 members of a neighbourhood watch were actually shot dead, I presume by criminals. They were on a night patrol. And he said, there's this culture in KZN, this is what Mkhwanazi said, a culture where people want to go and patrol. But he said to people, I know you belong to community policing forums and neighbourhood watches, but you are not police officers. You are not trained. If you see something, you must tell us. He said, you can't go around and patrol your neighbourhood with a shambok against people who use guns. I thought that was an important point. I mean, true. But we do see this, and I understand why. If things are happening in your community, you want to go and be involved in that. You want to go and actually, stop it from happening. You want to go and look after the people in your community, of course. And you want to stop crime. But I thought that was an interesting comment, and we'll talk a bit more about police reservists and people involved in the community who get involved, trying to stop crime a little later in the show. There's also a story this morning from Peter Fabricius. He's a sort of long-term diplomatic correspondent. I hope he doesn't mind me calling him long-term, a more polite word for veteran. And he quotes diplomatic sources as saying that when Naledi Pandor, the former Minister of Foreign Affairs, no longer in the government now, when she met the President of Equatorial Guinea, Teodoro Obiang Nguema, and let's just be clear here, he does not lead a democratic government, okay? Let's just be very clear. If I remember correctly, he actually killed his uncle to become president. I mean, this is what we're talking about in Equatorial Guinea. Now, what happened was 2 South Africans, Peter Huxham and Frik Potgieter, have been held in Equatorial Guinea for a very long time. The Equatorial Guinea government claims that they're guilty of corruption, of drugs trafficking, They deny that. The United Nations also says there's no evidence of that and they're being held unjustly. Well, it seems that Nguema said to Pandor directly, we will hold these 2 people, Peter Huxham and Frik Potgieter, until the Vice President's son, so Equatorial Guineans' Vice President's son's homes in Cape Town are released. They're being held under a court order. So can you imagine the problem for government? Now, they're being held under a court order because this person, the Vice President's son, owes millions to a South African. So what the South African did is they went to court and said, this person owes me money. Will you seize these properties? The court said, yes. That's a court order. That's how the system works in our democracy. Now the Equatorial Guinean government is simply saying, no, we're going to hold your people until you go against a court order. Very, very interesting there. I don't know how you would deal with that. Nice to hear from you this morning. 086 000 2032, SMS 41391. You tweet us FM Radio at Stephen Grootes. WhatsApp voice notes this morning 0614 104 107. Good morning. It's 16 after 6.
Oscar and Emmy winner Kevin Costner is John Dutton, a 6th-generation homesteader and devoted father. John controls the largest contiguous ranch in the United States. Operating in a corrupt world where politicians are compromised by influential oil and lumber corporations and where land grabs make developers billions. Shifting alliances, unsolved murders, open wounds, and hard-earned respect puts Dutton's property in constant conflict with those it borders, an expanding town, an Indian reservation, and America's first national park. Channel your inner drama with Yellowstone, Saturdays at 9:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
S3. And we will buy 500 cars and we will buy 500 more. Just to be the one who buys your car, will come to you and offer more. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
It's either you have it or you don't. The Watermaster demonstrated what it takes to eventually lay your hands on gold. Cameron Vanderberg won the 100-meter breaststroke gold medal at the 2012 Summer Olympics in a new world record time of 58.46 seconds.
Still got a good lead, Vandenberg. Katajima won't get there. Does he get the world record, Vandenberg? He's done the lot in one big swim.
What a performance. Celebrate. Well done, Cameron Vanderberg. South Africa wins gold.
Vanderberg also represented South Africa at the 2008 and 2016 Olympics. He has won numerous world championship medals since his debut in 2007 when he took a bronze. Magical moments of the Olympics. Brought to you by SABC Sport, proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. For the love of the game.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
And Musa, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. Good morning, Stephen.
What's coming up today?
Well, the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, is back in the National Assembly for the presentation of the presidency's budget. And there's been some objection to Dr. John Hlophe's election to the Judicial Service Commission. Lobby group AfriForum has filed papers before the Constitutional Court, and the DA has launched an urgent interdict before the Western Cape High Court, and that's against the MK party leader, Dr. John Hlophe's designation to the Judicial Service Commission, and the party is one of the several that objected to his election to the JSC. We also have the former ANC President, Jacob Zuma. He will be appearing at the ANC's DC hearing. It will be done virtually, and we know that he has been insisting on a physical appearance, and Zuma has been charged under Rule 25 of the ANC's constitution for endorsing the MK party ahead of the May general elections. Proceedings against him were postponed last week, and it was to allow for the outcomes of the hearing to be communicated to him. Excuse me, and that was by his representative and former ANC NEC member Tony Yengeni. The former president also threatened court action, and that was if the panel refused for his request for a physical appearance. ANC MP Zizi Kotwa is also back in court today, and the former Sports, Arts and Culture Minister, we know, resigned from his cabinet post after being charged in relation to bribes of 1.6 million rand received from the JSC-listed tech company EOA, and the case was postponed to today to allow for consultation and pre-trial preparations. And the court case against the Gauteng Health Department's failure to spend about 784 million rand that was allocated for cancer patients. Section 27 will approach the High Court today to request a postponement of the case that was brought by the Cancer Alliance, and it was scheduled to be heard today at the Johannesburg High Court. The MEC for Health in Gauteng and the Gauteng Department of Health and two hospitals that provide radiation oncology services in the province only filed the answering affidavits in the case on the evening of last Friday, and the respondents' answering affidavits were actually due on the 12th of July. And lastly, the Defence Counsel, Thulani Mgomezulu, has accused number one in the Senzo Mehiwa murder trial, the state accused the state of being selective in disclosing information. And this morning, the Vodacom Forensic Liaison Supervisor is expected back on the stand. We know that 5 men are on trial at the High Court in Pretoria for the 2014 murder of the Bafana Bafana captain.
And Musa, thank you. We'll be listening on the radio 22 after 6.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
Your weather this morning: Tshwane fine 4 and 26, Johannesburg fine 3 and 25, Vereeniging fine 2 and 26, Bombela partly cloudy 13 and 27, Polokwane fine 8 and 27, Mahakeng fine 5 and 27, Vryburg fine -3 and 26, Mangaung fine -3 and 22, Kimberley fine -3 and 23, Uppington fine 2 and 25, Cape Town fine partly cloudy later 8 and 17, George fine becoming partly cloudy from the afternoon, a light to moderate westerly 6 and 17. Gqeberha fine, partly cloudy later, light northwesterly wind 4 and 21. East London fine, a light to moderate northwesterly wind 9 and 21. eThekwini fine, a moderate northeasterly wind 14 and 23. Richards Bay partly cloudy, a moderate northeasterly 14 and 25. And Pietermaritzburg fine 5 and 24.
Shopping sprees. Catching flights while others catch feelings. Shaking that thing while sipping on some bubbles on a yacht in Dubai. Some call it living soft. You know, Njofo Njofo. Tune into Sugar Baby Dating, a highly revealing documentary that lifts the lid of the sugar baby dating phenomenon and talks to girls who have a string of rich older men funding their lifestyles and the women that feel damaged by the whole experience. This Thursday at 10 p.m. Is it just a little frivolous fun, or is there a sinister side to sugar baby dating? Channel your inner curiosity with Sugar Baby Dating, 11 July at 10 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
The reality is that 90% of South Africans don't save enough for retirement. This National Savings Month, why not be part of the 10% who do? Choose an interest rate of up to 12.6% after 60 months with the Nedbank Electronic Optimum Plus account. Anyone over 55 can open theirs via the Nedbank Money app in less than 2 minutes. Join the bank that's best for your savings goals. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
The countdown to the Paris Olympics 2024 is just days away. Live the intense rivalries, inspiring comebacks, and record-breaking performances from a wide variety of sporting disciplines such as aquatics, athletics, gymnastics, boxing, breakdancing, and football. Experience the Olympic Games Paris 2024 from Friday 26 July until Sunday 11 August. Live on SABC Sport, the proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024.
For the love of the game.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
24 minutes after 6, confirmation now that Israel has for the first time struck directly at Houthi groups in Yemen after a drone attack by the Houthis killed an Israeli in Tel Aviv. The Houthis have been targeting shipping in the Red Sea. It's the first time, though, that Israel has hit them directly. Abel Eerstehuizen is a professor of military strategy in the Faculty of Military Science at the University of Stellenbosch. Professor, good morning. What did Israel do in Yemen? Who exactly were they targeting?
Well, that's an interesting question, Stephen. And there's a lot of speculation. I mean, they attacked the port of Hodeidah. And the speculation is that they have attacked the port because it is the port through which the weapons that Iran is supplying to the Houthis in Yemen is imported. That's the port they are using, and that's precisely why Israel struck the port. And they have the very surgical attack on the port itself. But yeah, the higher order question is why Israel, of course, has done it and not the US or some of the other partners that's operating in the Red Sea area, why it was Israel that have done it and not the United States, Britain or France that's guarding the shipping in the area.
So, I mean, we're in a situation now where there are multiple groups. They all seem to have missiles and drones. Some of them are specifically opposed to Israel. And this has sort of been Israel's strategic situation for quite a long time. But technology is changing everything. We have the situation in Gaza, which has intensified all of these tensions. the people have tried to, strange phrase, de-escalate what's happening there. But it seems more and more likely that actually there's going to be more and more conflicts involving more and more drones and missiles.
Yeah, I think one has to be clear about this. You're sitting in essence with three groups in the area that is supported and supplied by the Iranians. They are all Shiite Muslim terror groups. The Lebanon, we have Hezbollah. In Gaza, we're sitting with Hamas, and in Yemen, the Houthis. And all three of those groups are supplied by the Iranian, and some speculate about the involvement of the Russians to keep the Americans and others occupied in that area. So it is in essence a single entity that is driving the conflict from the one side. And of course, by doing that, they keep the whole region in to some extent, unstable, because they keep the Syrians involved, they keep Lebanon involved, Israel, Saudi Arabia. By supplying these three groups, they succeed in sort of drawing the whole region into a bigger order conflict, and I think that's the fact that we shouldn't miss here.
Professor Abel Esterhazy, thank you, Professor of Strategy at the Faculty of Military Science at the University of Stellenbosch. 28 after 6.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. A new addition to the Sundowns coaching team. They need more help?
Yeah, apparently French flair. Romain Folz is their new assistant coach. Some exciting times ahead. Folz previously led AmaZulu and Maruma Gallants. He joins a robust technical team led by newly promoted head coach Manqoba Nciti at Sundowns. Now, the team is currently in Austria for pre-season preparations, with Folz bringing his expertise from FIFA's high-performance department. Meanwhile, the former head coach of Sundowns, Rulani Mokoena, has swiftly moved on. He's secured that position with the Moroccan Giants Wydad Casablanca. The start date of the new PSL season remains unannounced as the league undergoes sponsor transitions. Now, the Orlando Pirates midfielder Makhahleni Makaula says they are not reading too much into the technical changes at Sundowns, which he feels will have a minimal effect in the new season. After successfully defending their MTN 8 and Nedbank Cup trophies and storming into the top two to return to the CAF Champions League next season, many people have tipped Pirates as favourites to dethrone Sundowns in the DStv Premiership. Makaula, who says from their recent trip to Spain, they've shown they can have the capacity to challenge for the league title.
But we have the capacity to challenge them. We have the players. I've seen it in Spain, and the new guys have gelled well. And I've once said to my roommate that we have a really good squad. Like, we can challenge for the league, but we must concentrate each and every time, each and every game. We must concentrate, because if you don't concentrate, the teams, they punish you, and when they punish you, it's difficult to come back sometimes.
Let's go to the South African discus thrower Victor Hogan, excited to realize his lifelong dream of becoming an Olympian after qualifying through the ranking points system. He was among the final athletes confirmed for Athletic South Africa squad, which consists of 34 athletes heading to the Paris Games this month. He secured 5th place at the 2013 World Championships in Moscow, Russia, marking his best performance in the event. And you can catch all the Olympic action live on SABC Sport. That's a wrap for now on Sunrise. More sport top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. AfriForum on and John Hlophe. That's in the next half hour. You're with SFM leading the conversation, 6:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, the ANC's disciplinary hearing against former party president Jacob Zuma is expected to resume today on a virtual platform. Zuma has been charged under Rule 25 of the ANC Constitution for endorsing the MK party ahead of the May general elections. Lobby group AfriForum has filed papers before the Constitutional Court against the designation of impeached Western Cape Judge President John Hlophe to serve on the Judicial Services Commission. And the US Vice President Kamala Harris has secured the support of enough delegates to win the Democratic presidential candidacy just more than a day after Joe Biden stepped out of the race and endorsed her. She's now expected to be officially confirmed in a roll call vote in early August. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, the Lenasia side of Joburg will open this morning. Thankfully, no repetition of what you went through yesterday. The N12 is flowing from Protea Glen to Eldos. The link roads coming out of Lenasia's Nirvana Drive to and from the N12 are also open as well. There is a crash if you're coming out of Pretoria. It's the N14 at Jean Avenue. Quite a backlog into that scene. As you leave Pretoria, head down towards Midrand and Johannesburg this morning. Northern parts of KZN, the R34 is currently blocked halfway between Mpangeni and Undundulu. That's burning tyres across the R34 with protesting. We understand there might be some taxis involved in that unrest as well. So Melma through to Mpangeni, do it later rather than at this hour, because you'll probably just find yourself being stuck in queuing traffic both directions. Cape Town, the N2 inbounds pretty heavily back up this morning. It's been a while since we've seen it this heavy. No major obstruction, but it's absolutely jam-packed from the airport right through to Rapenburg Road in the Pinelands area. And of course the N1 still with the flooding. This is just starting to sort of cause ripple-on effects now. The flooding on the N1 inbound at Sable Road, 2 lanes open only, backlogs your traffic right through to Brackenfell, and it is now just having an impact on the N7 North coming up from Goodwood, a real struggle to get off the N7 and into the N1, and you'll find exactly the same thing coming down the N7 through Summer Greens from Edgemead shortly. The southbound side will really start to back up at those ramps. It's a good idea to avoid the N1 and certainly to avoid the N7 trying to ramp into it. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Intaling Lechele, good morning. How are you doing?
Morning, Stephen. I'm good, thanks, and I hope you're well.
All good, thanks. How are the markets?
Now, that Trump trade rally seems to be running out of steam, with investors throwing money into tech stocks again. This, of course, ahead of second quarter earnings from tech giants, Google owner Alphabet and Tesla. This saw the Nasdaq Composite close higher in yesterday's trade, followed by the S&P and Dow Jones. It was green screens in Wall Street yesterday. Now, over in Asia, markets off to a rocky start with stocks mixed. We are seeing traders a bit reluctant to make big moves ahead of U.S. inflation numbers due later this week. Back at home, local markets kicking the week off positively. The JSE All-Share up 0.7%, driven by a near 1.7% jump from the Industrial 25. Local traders are eyeing political developments playing out in the U.S. and local inflation data out later this week. The rand, in the meantime, is still sitting under 18.30, sitting at similar levels we saw yesterday. It's trading at 18.25 to the dollar.
And then capital to South African startups. It's a record of 3 billion rand.
Now, investors are seeing value in the budding tech sector in South Africa, according to a report by the Southern African Venture Capital and Private Equity Association. Capital flow to startups reached more than 3 billion rands for the first time last year. Investors are showing strong interest in startups in the ICT sector. This, of course, following global trends. The most popular areas within ICT are fintech, edtech, software, e-commerce, and online marketplaces. As a result, ICT deals have surged, making up 87.6% of total activity, nearly double the 48.1% seen in 2022. Now, fintech continues to lead the way, accounting for about 18.3% of the total value and number of deals, making it the most attractive and active subsector within the ICT industry. Recently, we've seen some relatively known South African startups raising a lot of money. The largest amounts were raised by fintech companies, including Peach Payments. We also saw Ozo raising about $48 million in the past 12 months. Now, despite flows hitting record highs, the association has highlighted that the number of businesses receiving capital is low, with only 94 getting capital last year.
And then more Mr. Price customers are using credit.
That's right, Stephen. So what we're seeing is in this tough economic environment where consumers have less disposable income, we're seeing more of them turn to credit. In Mr. Price's first quarter update, the retailer noted a 42.7% jump in new account applications. Despite high demand for credit, Mr. Price has decided to take a cautious approach to lending, approving only 18.7% of the applications. Now, when looking at the fashion retailer sales picture, credit sales ticked up 0.3% in the first quarter. Cash sales, however, still account for a majority of total sales, making up close to 88%. Now, in a recent update, Mr. Price also noted that it managed to improve its market share for 11 consecutive months, and on a 12-month rolling basis, it has gained just over 1.1 billion rand in market share. The group also said that June was the star month after subdued trade in April and May, as consumers shopped for winter items on the back of colder weather.
Ntaleng Lechela, thanks very much indeed. Do appreciate it. Back in an hour.
Africa Update on SAFM Sunrise, a continental overview of current African affairs.
Russ Advocate Sipho Mantula, good morning.
Steve Oboro, fresh morning and Jumbo Africa to the listeners.
In Uganda, the police sealed off their biggest opposition party. Why did they do that?
Stephen, there's a planned protest today in Kampala that the opposition leaders and the human rights activists say that embezzlement and misuse of government funds are widespread in Uganda, and have accused President Museveni for failing to prosecute corrupt top level or officials who are politically loyal or connected to him. But Museveni also on Saturday warned those young people, said they were sponsored by the foreigners, and that he's also have instructed the Criminal Investigations Directorate to arrest and prosecute all government officials linked to the ghost civil servants on the payroll. So Bobby Wine has been targeted, but he says he's not part of this protest, but he's supporting the protest of today that is in Kampala. So we can see the wave in East Africa coming from Kenya. It moves now to Uganda, Kampala.
And then in Sudan, the head of the United Arab Emirates, the president there, saying he wants an end to the fighting in Sudan.
He wants the end of the fight in Sudan pens ahead, because remember, he was accused for supporting the Rapid Support Forces earlier last year. Now he has engaged telephonically with General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan on the resolution of the conflict in Sudan. He says that they want to find a solution to end the ongoing conflict in Sudan. We know very well, Stephen, 10 million people have been displaced in Sudan since the beginning of the conflict, and 25 million people are in need of aid, according to the latest UN reports.
And then in Tanzania, the President, Samia Suluhu, firing two senior members of government.
These are influential figures in the ruling party, Chama cha ya Mapinduzi, January Makamba, Minister of Foreign Affairs, as well as Nape Ntuli, who is the Minister of Information, Communication and ICT. The termination has not been really raised. What were the reasons for the reshuffling? Others are calling it a mini cabinet reshuffle by President Samia Suluhu Hassan. He has appointed the former ambassador of Tanzania to Italy, Mohamed Tabita Kombo, as the new Foreign Affairs Minister, and Jerry Silia as a Minister of Information in that aspect. Remember, since 2021, Hassan came into power, Stephen, he has been tussling with these issues of human rights record, the issues of opposition lamenting on the human rights record in Tanzania. But it appears the one of Minister of Information, there was a video that was circulating where he was saying that it will depend who counts the votes and announce their results.
Sure. And then in the DRC, M23 rebels there, they're blaming the government coalition for violating a truce.
Those truces have been signed between July 5 and July 17th, which was mediated by the U.S. With M23 rebels and the DRC government forces. But now they are blaming the government to say that they have not released the IDPs in one of the areas in the North Kivu, areas like Masisi, Ruzintaga, Kirumba. Those are the villages around the North Kivu. So they are blaming the government, and they are saying they will want to resolve this issue. They want a direct and open political dialogue, whereas the government of Tshisekedi talks about that the conflict will be resolved militarily.
And then in our archives, this day, the 23rd of July, 1892, Sipho.
It's 132 years as the anniversary. The founding father of the Organization of African Unity, the Field Marshal, the defender of human faith, was born on this day. Haile Selassie was born as Listafari Makwenene in the village of Jasagora in Harare province in Ethiopia. He had many impacts even in the South African politics by also offering military bases for many liberation movements, as well as affording Nelson Mandela a code name and a passport during those years. So Emperor Haile Selassie was born on this day, and many Rastafarians across the continent and the globe are celebrating his day celebration. Asante sana SG, as you are still observing the International Mandela Month.
Rust Advocate Sipho Montulip, thank you so much. Back, of course, tomorrow. More news from our continent through the day here on SFM, 19 minutes to 7.
S3 is bringing you the best in Indian cinema every Sunday at 2 p.m. Laugh, dance, get drawn into the drama, revved up with the action, and maybe, just maybe, shed a little tear. Catch Gagi on the 7th of July, Selfie on the 14th, Prince on the 21st, and Laila Majnu on the 28th. It's Indian cinema like you've never seen it before. Channel your best entertainment with Indian cinema only on S3. Open up.
S3. Could you be paying less for your car insurance? Outsurance has comprehensive cover with all the bells and whistles. An essential cover for cars older than 5 years under 125,000 Rand that aren't financed.
I am Flip. I'm from Vredendal. I'm 54 years old. I'm only paid 267 Rand for my 2005 Ford Ranger from Outsurance Essential.
Whether you choose comprehensive or essential cover, Outsurance will make sure you don't pay more than you have to for car insurance. SMS out to 30754 now. Even if you just save a few hundred rands a month, it could add up to thousands a year.
Hi, I'm Lorraine. I'm 31 from Durbanville. I pay 770 Rand a month for my 2023 Toyota Corolla Cross from Outsurance Comprehensive.
Do it now. Go to outsurance.co.za for a 10-minute quote that could save you thousands. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Greatness has a way of overcoming all the obstacles. South Africa is readmitted into the International Olympic Committee. The Afrika Dzonga flag was flown by marathoner Dan Dow at the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games Barcelona 1992. Elana Meyer rose to the occasion with a silver medallion in the women's 10,000 meters. While tennis doubles pairing of Wayne Ferreira and Pete Norval grabbed another silver.
Second and silver medalist representing South Africa, Wayne Ferreira and Pete Norval.
Team Africa Jibembe. Magical moments of the Olympics. Brought to you by SABC Sport, proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. For the love of the game.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
16 minutes to 7. Good morning. Yesterday here on SAFM Sunrise, you heard a conversation with the acting head of department in the Social Development Department in Gauteng, Bongani Ngumani. He was speaking after the Gauteng provincial government apologised to NGOs for not paying them the subsidies that it has paid them for many years. It does seem now that NGOs are being paid, but the delay, and it was a long delay, led to some NGOs, they had to stop providing services. They weren't able to look after children, elderly people, and people living with disabilities. But there's also been a dispute over why the Gauteng provincial government decided to stop paying NGOs when it had paid them for many, many years. Yesterday, Ngumani told you that this was all because of a finding by the Auditor General's office. This is how that conversation played out. But the Auditor General said they were being misquoted by your department. Your department said we're changing the system because the Auditor General wants us to change it. The Auditor General's office said that's not true.
You know, when we met with the Auditor General after that press statement, they denied that. The Auditor General, first thing, they denied that the person who was quoted there is part of them. They said they don't know that person. We had a meeting. That meeting was recorded, and they therefore said they will follow up with their own internal process. They will conduct their own internal process and come back to us. We just need to follow up on that statement, on that press statement that was released by them, because we are constantly in touch with the Auditor General. We may not have raised the issue the way they raised it, but they raised concerns concerning how the the NPO processes in the department were managed. So we were not really just disrupting. Ours was to try and enhance systems, procedures, and ensure that the checks and balance ensure proper accountability on how money is dispersed, how money is managed in the entire NPO sector.
Bongani Ngomani speaking to us yesterday. Daniel Steyn is a journalist at Ground Up. He's been reporting on the story intensely, and it was actually to him that the Auditor General released the statement. Daniel, good morning. What did the Auditor General say? Isn't Ngomani speaking the truth here?
Good morning. So I think just to add some context to where this dispute comes from. So in May this year, the Gauteng Care Crisis Committee took the department to court to compel the department to pay the non-profit organizations that have been successful in their applications. And this was almost 2 months into the new financial year, and hundreds of organizations had been waiting, had not yet received subsidies for the services that they basically provide on behalf of the state. And in his responding affidavit, which is a sworn affidavit in that court case in the High Court, Bongani Ngomani said that the delays in payment were due to a centralization of the funding process, which he said was necessary because of corruption and fraud in the department and non-profit sector. And he said that these drastic changes were made to the non-profit funding process, and I quote, pursuant to the findings of maladministration within the department's NBO funding process by various regulatory bodies such as the Auditor General. And he said that, and I quote, the findings of the Auditor General concluded that some of the service level agreements concluded with organizations contained approval of large payments in excess of 1 million rands by officials not authorized to sign off on these payments. Now, basically, and then he concludes that the department was required to revise its entire appointment process of organizations. And that revision of the appointment process is what we saw play out over the past few months and what caused these delays, and that process ultimately collapsed. So when we asked the Auditor General's spokesperson, Africa Bosso, about this, Africa said that the Auditor General actually made no recommendations to revise the entire process. And Bosso said that the only findings related to non-profit organizations actually dated back to 2021, and these were related to monitoring and evaluation, which included, refining the service level agreements to improve monitoring and evaluation, such as targets, specifying targets and making sure that the non-profit organizations can be held to account for the money they receive. But crucially, no recommendation was made to revise the entire process. No findings were made related to the payments, to payments larger than 1 million rand, or of maladministration. So it's bizarre that Ngomani came onto your show yesterday and said that the Auditor General actually distanced themselves from the spokesperson and said they don't recognize Africa Bosso, who's been there for years. And I think that it's important to note that Bosso did not deny that the Auditor General made findings. They did make findings back in 2021, but these were related to monitoring and evaluation. And what's crucial here is that Ngomani told a court of law in a sworn affidavit that the department revised and centralized its appointment process because of findings by the Auditor General. And the findings he describes in his affidavit are not the findings the Auditor General made. And he actually admitted this yesterday when he said, we may not have raised this in the way they raised it. I mean, it's crucial that they raise it in the way they raise it. They need to be detailed. They need to be specific, especially when a multi-million rand non-profit sector is at stake.
Daniel Steyn, thank you very much indeed, journalist at Ground Up. Do appreciate the clarity in what appears at this stage to be a correction. There are other role players in all of this. In fact, the Gauteng ANC issued a statement yesterday. We asked to speak to Lesego Makobele, who is the spokesperson for the ANC in Gauteng. He agreed to speak to us at this time so that he would get, at the very least, a balanced picture. Unfortunately, not answering his phone this morning. Daniel Steyn from Ground Up, really appreciate the, what do I use, clarity on this. Thank you very much indeed. 10 minutes now to 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
First up, the N12 coming in from Protea Glen towards Eldorado Park, passing yesterday's protest at Lenasia. All clear this morning. The N12 and the link roads to take you to and from Lenasia, to and from the N12. Those routes are open as well. So it's all fairly calm and fairly normal through that area. Now, there is a crash on Joburg's N1 North, just approaching the Winnie Mandela drive exit at Four Ways. Very quickly, that traffic is backlogging through the Malabongwe exit and back towards Bayers Nordia. So the N1 North under pressure this morning on that run through Randburg Four Ways. There's also been quite a big collision seen on the N14 coming out of Pretoria by Jean Avenue. So if you're on your way down towards Midrand, that section of the Ben Skimmen queuing up as well. And a breakdown leaving Benoni on the N12, lane closure before Atlas Road. That is very quickly pushing traffic all the way back through to Snake Road and looking particularly heavy. A reminder, the R34 is currently blocked with no movement between Mpangeni and Ndundulu. Effectively, that takes out travel between Mpangeni and Melmoth. So anyone with plans to travel that way should do it later this morning once that road has been cleared and the scene cleared and the road reopened. And then Cape Town still really battling along with this N1, the flooding. The water is starting to subside, but there are still lanes on the left closed at Sable Road. The traffic perhaps not as bad as yesterday, but it is still bad. Backlogs right through to the Durban Road exit in the Belleville area. Also, you'll get a real big backlog on the N7 both ways trying to get off the N7 and into that N1. So certainly the N7, if you normally just take that route and off-ramp at the N1 highway to turn towards Cape Town or Century City, avoid that option. Plenty of other options. Four-Trekker Road, one of them, is reasonably busy this morning. Goodwood, Kensington, Maitland. So you can just see a lot of traffic staying off the N1 and taking that Four-Trekker Road and doing exactly that, just jamming that route now with the extra volumes. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Shopping sprees. Catching flights while others catch feelings. Shaking that thing while sipping on some bubbles on a yacht in Dubai. Some call it living soft. You know, Njofo. Tune into Sugar Baby Dating, a highly revealing documentary that lifts the lid of the sugar baby dating phenomenon and talks to girls who have a string of rich older men funding their lifestyles and the women that feel damaged by the whole experience. This Thursday at 10 p.m. Is it just a little frivolous fun? Or is there a sinister side to sugar baby dating? Channel your inner curiosity with Sugar Baby Dating, 11 July at 10 p.m. only on S3. Open up. S3.
From 1952 in Helsinki to 1996 in Atlanta, Penny Haynes makes history 44 years later. The sensational swimmer ended the long wait to a victory in the women's 100-meter breaststroke.
Haynes tried to hold Beard off again. She did it in the 100. Can she do it in the 200?
Champions always want more, especially at the Olympic Games. Haynes was not content with just one gold. She scooped the second in the women's 200-meter breaststroke in a brand new Olympic record.
Haynes will win gold for the second time, an Olympic record time.
Magical moments of the Olympic Games. Brought to you by SABC Sport, proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. For the love of the game.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
6 minutes to 7. Good morning. Well, last week, a huge debate about the appointment by Parliament of MK's Parliamentary Caucus leader, Dr. John Hlophe, to the Judicial Service Commission. Hlophe was the Western Cape judge present. He was impeached after the Judicial Service Commission upheld a ruling by the Judicial Conduct Tribunal that he was guilty of misconduct for trying to interfere in a constitutional court case involving now former President Jacob Zuma. Now, AfriForum say they're going to court to try and remove him from the JSE. Kali Kriel is the CEO at AfriForum. Kali, good morning.
Good morning to you, Stephen.
As I understand it, Hlophe is representing Parliament on the JSE, and he's there because he does qualify to be a member of Parliament. On what legal basis, then, are you going to try and remove him from the JSE?
Yes, of course he qualifies to be a member of Parliament, but being a member of Parliament and Parliament itself does not have a right to disregard the country's constitution, which is the highest law in the land. And if you look at the constitution in terms of Article 165, it clearly states that the National Assembly has an obligation to assist and to protect the courts among other things, to ensure that the courts are independent, impartial, that their dignity is protected, and that the courts are effective. And by appointing somebody that was found to be unfit to be a judge, to now decide on who should be judges or make recommendations on who should be judges, that is neglecting the constitutional duty. It's actually quite contrary to what the Constitution prescribes.
So I obviously accept the issue really, I suppose, to sort of put it crisply, as the lawyers say, is that someone who was had findings made against them by a body now sits on the body, right? So it's like the child who is consistently badly behaved made a prefect, to use a sort of silly example, maybe a bad example. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the voice of MK should be muzzled or censored. I mean, there would be an argument to say that someone who believes in Africanizing the law, that someone who represents 15% of voters, is absolutely the kind of person who should be on the Judicial Service Commission. That we actually, to represent voters, need exactly the kind of voice that Dr. John Hlophe has.
Yes, I think we believe from AfriForum side firmly that all voices should be heard. And I don't think MK should be muzzled out of this position. What the MK should be free to do is to appoint another person that is fit to serve on the Judicial Service Commission. As you've said, it's really unthinkable that you would have somebody that sits on that commission. He has to now decide which judges have integrity or which aspiring judges has integrity, who are suitable to serve as judges, while he is himself not suitable. So I think it's important that MK should appoint somebody, but somebody that has not been found unfit to serve as a judge.
It's hard to know what's going to happen here. The ANC told us last week that they did not object to Hlophe's nomination to the Judicial Service Commission because they believe the law is the law at the moment. And I don't think they're the only ones who make that argument. This can go in many directions, Kali. It is possible that you could lose, and you would have set a precedent that you would not want to set. Are you sure this is the best case to go on in this example? I understand, as you say, why you're doing it. But you may find there is a chance it could backfire against you, is my point.
Yes, no, I think that is the case with any court case that you take on. And any time you fight for justice, you are not guaranteed of success. But some issues are important enough to fight for. And I think one of the cornerstones of democracy is the rule of law, is the fact that the judiciary has credibility. And if that is being threatened, we have an obligation as civil society, well, I think actually all citizens, to say we need to do what we can. But we believe we have a strong argument, and hopefully we will win. If we don't win, we are in the same bad situation that we are now. Because then we'll sit with somebody on the JSC that would choose or help to choose judges that himself is not fit to be a judge.
Kali Kriel, thank you, CEO at AfriForum. Well, as you know, strong views on the Hlophe matter, and it does go in many, many directions. Well, more to come in the next little while. We'll speak to the Regional Secretary for the ANC in Johannesburg. What's going to happen to the Mayor, Kabelo Gwamanda? Is Action SA, does the ANC trust Action SA after Action SA has said many, many, many times it won't work with the ANC? Also, Professor Adrian Saville, the AGOA Forum, Parks Tau, the Minister, he's on his way there now. We'll find out more about that. Don't forget your mediator conversation is all about police reservists and crime wardens. There's a lot to look at there. You with SFM leading the conversation. Good morning. It's Tuesday morning. It's 7 o'clock.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, ANC's disciplinary hearing against Zuma resumes and AfriForum set to challenge Dr. Hlophe's election to the JSC. Good morning. The ANC's disciplinary hearing against former party president Jacob Zuma is expected to resume today on a virtual platform. Zuma's been charged under Rule 25 of the ANC's constitution for endorsing the MK party ahead of the May general elections. Proceedings against Zuma were postponed last week so that outcomes of the hearing could be communicated to him by his representative and former ANC NEC member Tony Yengeni. Sibahle Mota reports.
Zuma, who is being represented by former ANC NEC member Tony Yengeni, has argued that the hearing against him should be held in person. The former ANC president states that the provisions of the ANC constitution allow him to appear before the National Disciplinary Committee in person. Zuma has also requested that the hearing should be made public, a request that has been vehemently rejected by the party. The ANC maintains that the disciplinary hearing against the MK leader will neither be held in person nor be made public. I am Sibahle Mota in Johannesburg.
Lobby group AfriForum has filed papers before the Constitutional Court against the designation of impeached Western Cape Judge President John Hlophe to serve on the Judicial Services Commission. Dr. Hlophe was elected to serve on the JSC for the MK party earlier this month, despite his impeachment as a judge earlier this year. Zoleka Kodashe reports.
AfriForum is seeking direct access to the Apex Court over Hlophe's appointment to the Judicial Service Commission. AfriForum wants the court to declare the appointment unlawful and inconsistent with the National Assembly's constitutional duties. Among others, AfriForum relies on Section 165, subsections 3 and 4 of the Constitution, which prescribe that no person or organ of state may interfere with the functioning of the courts, and that organs of state, through legislative and other measures, must assist and protect the courts to ensure the independence, impartiality, dignity, accessibility and effectiveness of the courts.
Northwest University local government expert Arthur Schipola says the recycling of senior managers in struggling municipalities in the province will hamper service delivery. Schipola says municipalities should be professionalized to improve service delivery. This comes after the Lichtenburg-based Disciplinary local municipality recently appointed municipal manager Olaitswi Bojasinyana. He was previously with the Khanyisa-based Kagisano Mulopo local municipality. Shupola explains.
The issue of professionalization of local government is also attached to what the NDP says. We have to create attractive local government systems. So in a situation where we recycle people with clouds hanging over their heads, appointing them to different municipalities, I doubt it will contribute towards, building sustainable local government and attractive local government as the NDP instruct, us to do.
Meanwhile, Tumelo Maruping of the ANC in the province says the party's caucus ignored its advice not to endorse the appointment.
The African National Congress does not support that move that they have done in terms of appointing the municipal manager, let alone the type of municipal manager that they've appointed, whom the reports are saying that he still have some cases to answer from another entity that he was working in.
A South African immigrant in the United States has been sentenced to 226 years for the first-degree murders of two Alaskan Native women who had gone missing in 2019. 53-year-old Brian Stephen Smith of Queenstown in the Eastern Cape received 99 years for the murder of 30-year-old Kathleen Jo Henry and 52-year-old Veronica Abachuk in Alaska's capital, Anchorage. An additional 28 years were imposed related to sexual assault and tampering with evidence. And finally, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris has secured the support of enough delegates to win the Democratic presidential candidacy just more than a day after Joe Biden stepped out of the race and endorsed her. She is now expected to be officially confirmed in a roll call vote in early August. Earlier, Harris kicked off her campaign telling supporters in Delaware that she would take the Democrats to victory in November's election. The BBC's Sarah Smith has the details.
Ms. Harris pledged to unite the Democratic Party, and she started making the case as to why she was the best person to take on Donald Trump. She said in her previous roles as a courtroom prosecutor she had taken on predators who'd abused women and fraudsters who'd ripped off consumers, and that she knew Donald Trump's type. The Republican nominee seems deeply frustrated that he's no longer running against Joe Biden, calling to be reimbursed for the money he'd spent fighting the president. Ms. Harris has received a record amount of donations in the last 24 hours, over $81 million.
Recapping the top story, the ANC's disciplinary hearing against former party president Jacob Zuma is expected to resume today on a virtual platform. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
Your insurer makes many promises, but can they back it up? Outsurance can. That's why they're the best insurance company in South Africa. Outsurance has consistently had the best ombudsman for short-term insurance results for the past 11 years and awarded Best Short-Term Insurer by News24 for the past 2 years. Why would you want to be with anyone else? SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. Or visit outsurance.co.za for a 10-minute quote that could save you thousands. Licensed insurer and FSP, TCs and information online.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, rugby, the Blitzboks are ready to face Ireland at the Paris Olympics tomorrow. And Sports Minister Gator McKenzie aims to bring Formula One back to South Africa. All these stories and more just before 7:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very heavy backlogs around this N14 collision. It was southbound at Jean Avenue, but there's now an impact on the northbound side as well. So if you're moving out of Pretoria or heading into Pretoria, both ways on the bench given being held up. A M20 bus involved in that, so it may take a little while to clear. Joburg's N1 North, a crash before William Mandela at Four Ways, very heavy from Bayers Nordia side. And if you're just joining us, the N12 through Lenasia coming in from Protea Glen, all open. Other side of town, a couple of breakdowns, one on the N12 at Atlas Road, big delays through from Benoni, and a breakdown on the R21 opposite the airport causing some delays as well. Pietermaritzburg down to Durban. If you're wondering about the commute there this morning, there is a stationary truck near Umlas Road. It's on the westbound side, so that's going up to Pietermaritzburg. But if you're Durban bound, looking generally okay along the N3. And Cape Town, what we're seeing this morning is more people aware of this flooding on the N1 and taking alternative route action. So the N1 inbound from Belleville to Sable Road, very heavy with the lanes closed before that Sable Road exit. But it's routes like Edgemead Drive and Bosmansdam Road and Frans Conradi, Monte Vista Boulevard, Ford Trekker Road. You can just see motorists coming off that highway or just avoiding it altogether and looking for alternative routes, either through to Montague Gardens, Century City, or through towards Cape Town. So it's very busy, very heavy on the N1, and the alternative routes extra slow this morning. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
9 minutes after 7, good morning, you with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. All right, in a moment, the latest on the situation in Joburg. Sasabona Manganye, the regional secretary for the ANC in Joburg, on your radio in 2 minutes from now. Talking, of course, about the situation. Kabelo Gwamanda, it seems, on his way out. But also, can the ANC really trust Action SA? Also, our economy and AGOA. We'll find out more about that. I don't know if you know anyone who's a police reservist. I remember bumping into people years and years ago who were police reservists. There's been all sorts of questions about them. The police minister, Senzo Mkhunu, says he wants to employ 10,000 new police officers. Will reservists be first in line or not? There's a big question there. You know the number, of course, 086 000 2032. It's 9 after 7. Good morning.
Every year, 30,000 missionaries are called to serve the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints across the globe, the largest full-time missionary force of any church. Most are under 25 and away from home for up to 2 years, and the biggest training center in Europe is located in Chorley, Lancashire. The Mormons are coming. follows the journey of 3 young missionaries through the first few months of training and work in the field, which can make or break them. Tune into The Mormons Are Coming, Thursdays at 10 p.m. Channel your best dockies with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up.
The incredible story is written by the classical performance of a magnificent Olympian. Josiah Tugwani painted Atlanta in the colors of Africa Borwa. He took center stage and rounded off a memorable Olympics in style. Tugwani emerged victorious in a 124-man battlefield from 79 countries to claim gold in just 3 seconds. Every countryman wants a medallion. Ezekiel Sipeng delivered silver in the men's 800 meters. Marianne Kriel joined the podium with a collection of bronze in the women's 100-meter backstroke. Magical moments of the Olympics. Brought to you by SABC Sport, proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. For the love of the game.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
Good morning. Well, confirmation yesterday from the leader of Action SA, Herman Mashaba, that his party is now working with the ANC in Joburg. And under what seems to be a proposed deal, the mayor of Joburg, El Jamaz Kabelo Gwamanda, will leave office. That would mean then the ANC's Tata Morero would be elected mayor. And Action SA, it seems, would get positions in Joburg and perhaps Tshwane or Ekurhuleni and even in Gauteng. But Action SA many times has said it would never work with the ANC. Even after the elections, Mashaba again referred to the ANC as a criminal organisation. Sasabone Manganya is the regional secretary for the ANC in Johannesburg. Sasabone, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to your listeners.
Firstly, can you confirm, are you expecting Kabelo Gwamanda to resign as mayor of Joburg?
What I can indicate is that we have been engaging around how do we reconfigure the coalition in Johannesburg to meet the requirements of the ANC framework on coalition. That indicates that the party with the majority should be able to lead the coalition. In Johannesburg, that is the only area we were not compliant with is the fact that we are party with majority, but the mayor was not coming from the African National Congress. So that engagement is underway within the ANC, even within the GLU, Government of Local Unity. As you know, we have been in the Government of Local Unity since 2022 with other parties, and so far, all those parties who have engaged them and they are willing that the ANC can take over the mayorship in the spirit of also, your Government of National Unity statement of intent that requires the party with majority to lead. So it's from that context that the African National Congress will be able to have its own mayor. Of course, we have engaged Al Jama when Al Jama mayor was elected, and we are in the process of those engagements based on the new developments of reconfiguring the coalition.
Okay, the National Framework Agreement that you say, so this is the national framework that the ANC has. Under that framework, are you still allowed, you say you need to elect a majority mayor, are you still allowed to work with the EFF under that framework?
The coalition framework of the ANC, remember, the framework that I'm referring to is a framework that was developed not even for national or provincial government. It was developed for the local government by the NEC, and it was finalized in 2022. So the ANC in Joburg, because remember these current elections were provincial and national elections.
Sure.
We have been in the coalition since 2022, and we have long been approved to work with the economic freedom fighters. Hence, our coalition have survived until today.
Okay, so at the moment, the ANC is working with the DA in national government and in KwaZulu-Natal, but not in Gauteng. And from what I can see, what it looks like to me, Sasabona, is that the Gauteng ANC does not want to work with the DA. So are you working with Action SA now because you want to weaken the DA? Is that the plan? Is that why you're doing this, so that you can't be forced to work with the DA? Because if it would make much more sense, it would seem, if the ANC is working in national government with the DA and in KwaZulu-Natal with the DA, you and the DA together in Joburg would be able to elect your own mayor. You wouldn't need anyone else. That would be the easiest thing to do. You're not doing that. Instead, you're going with Action SA instead. Are you doing this to weaken the DA?
Even the DA is not our alliance partner. Our alliance partner is the Communist Party, COSATU and SANCO. Those are the people that we are forced to work with, ideologically speaking. The DA, the ANC works with the DA where it works with the DA informed by the electoral outcomes. That is why the ANC is not working with the DA in Limpopo, Mpumalanga and many other provinces. So there is no any decision of the ANC that says all structures of the ANC must work with the DA. It's based on negotiations and the negotiations outcomes. I mean, in Gauteng, you will know the ANC could not find each other with the DA, and that is why the DA is not part of the government of provincial unity. So the GNU and the GPU are not primarily formed because of the Democratic Alliance, where we are forced to do so. So in Johannesburg, we have no any obligation to work with the DA. We have been working. In fact, in the current form of our coalition, we have got 140 councillors out of 270. So even the Action SA approaching us that they are willing to also work with us, it's not informed by the fact that we do not have the numbers that we can form government without them, but it's informed by, of course, if they join us, that strengthens the coalition and our numbers, to be more, because we'll have about 191, including the IFP.
Okay,
so
but
it's more of strengthening the coalition. Yes.
But that's not the entire story. The story would also include your current agreement with the EFF, that neither you nor they will nominate or vote for someone from each of those parties. So let me put it another way. Your current agreement with the EFF means that you cannot elect Dada Morero as mayor because he is from the majority party, and your deal with the EFF says you won't do that. Your deal with Action SA means you will be able to elect Dada Morero and have your own mayor, which is what you want. But there's a much easier option, sorry to interrupt you. Fikile Mbalula said over the weekend, he's your Secretary General, he said over the weekend that in the interests of stability it may be that the coalition would have to cascade to local government. You seem to be going in the opposite direction, and this is why I keep asking this question. I'm interested in why you're going in the opposite direction.
Stephen, when the SG says things in the interest of stability, he did not define DA as the form of stability he's talking about. It's not about the DA. Stability is about, do we have a coalition that is stable in Johannesburg that will have ability to deliver services without being hampered? For an example, in simple terms, you had EFF in the last three special councils to approve the loan, not voting with the ANC. And that is what creates instability, because without the EFF, you don't have the required majority. If you then agree to work with Action SA, that then gives you an opportunity that even if whether Action SA or the EFF tomorrow might say, we are not agreeing to vote with you on this item, you will still be able to pass that item because you have sufficient majority. That is the stability the Secretary General is talking about. He was not speaking on behalf of the DA and all of us being forced to work with the DA. He was talking about ensuring that we have got sufficient numbers, sufficient majority that will ensure that, when we need to vote, whether for the budget or important issues that has to do with service delivery, we are not found wanting. That is what that stability is talking about.
Okay.
So it's not about the Democratic Alliance. DA is not having a monopoly of stabilizing, the legislatures in the country.
Sure, but Herman Mashaba has told us many times that he got into politics to remove you as the ANC from power. Right? I mean, he said so many times that the ANC is a criminal organization. And now you think it's going to be stable doing a deal with someone who got into politics to remove you from power?
Did the DA not say the same? Did the EFF not say which opposition party said they didn't say they want to remove the ANC? We are the ruling party. All opposition parties, they were campaigning to remove the ANC. They were clear during elections. There is nothing unique about what Action SA. The Action SA did the same, like many other opposition parties who were campaigning to remove the ANC. So we should not be working with the DA also, because the DA said they wanted, they are campaigning to rescue South Africa from the ANC. In that it means removing the ANC also. So there is no party that didn't have interest to remove us.
Sasabona Mangania, thank you very much indeed for your time, sir. The Regional Secretary of the ANC in Joburg, 21 after 7.
Time. When you're a kid, it moves slower than a sloth trying to get through airport security. There is just so much of it. Skip forward a few years to your 20s. Time is still your friend. It says have some balance. Go party and have fun. Then your 30s hit. And time suddenly steps on the accelerator like it's trying to catch a traffic light before it goes red. 40s. Now time is moving faster than your 10-year-old on a sugar high. 50. You're desperately trying to save as much as you can, but time is moving so fast. And all you can think is, where did all the time go? That's why after 50 years of investing, we've learned that time is the greatest gift of all. And the good news is, if you invest early, time gives you money. And then money gives you more time for some much-deserved you time. Now, isn't that a compelling enough reason to invest? Ellen Gray. Long-term investing. Ellen Gray is an authorized FSP.
Welcome to the SABC TV License Loyalty Program, where your payment isn't just about paying fees. It's about joining a vibrant community of connected viewers. Ready for the journey? Here's your roadmap. Sign up at sabctvlicenserewards.co.za and unlock an instant reward. You'll get an SMS to confirm your registration. Make a 50% or 100% payment to your account for a payment confirmation SMS and a promotional code. Explore our partners' product catalogs for an array of offerings. Receive an SMS voucher for your favorite outlet as the icing on the cake. Don't wait. Dive into a world of benefits. Register now at sabctvlicenserewards.co.za. T's and C's apply. Remember, TV license fees aren't just payments. They make a difference.
Big stories of the day. #SAFM Sunrise.
23 after 7, good morning. The new Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Parks Tau, now going to Washington for the AGOA forum being held there. The U.S. African Growth and Opportunity Act allows our goods to have duty-free access to U.S. markets, but there is opposition from some in the U.S. to renewing the act and allowing us to stay in the system because of our perceived support for Russia in its invasion of Ukraine. And if Donald Trump is re-elected president, he might want to make major changes. Professor Adrian Saville is a professor in economics, finance and strategy at the Gibbs Business School and at the Rotman School. Professor Saville, good morning to you and thanks for your time. There have been so many debates. There have been so many debates around AGOA recently. Is it really in danger? Do you get a sense that we are in danger of losing the benefits it gives us?
Stephen, my sense is that it feels like a bit of a bumpy relationship, running not quite love-hate, but warm and cold. That if you go back to the early days of the episode involving the Russian ship and perceptions on Russia, there was an overarching sense that South Africa would be ejected from the agreement, or that the agreement wouldn't be renewed. And then things sort of thawed from there, and we got pulled a little bit closer and warmer in the relationship. And my sense is that since then, things have since distanced again. So it is rocky, bumpy, up and down. And this is a very important moment to pull the partners close in an important relationship.
one of the things that it does is that it's an instrument of American, and I kind of mean this in a good way and a bad way. It's an instrument of American economics, right? It's an instrument of economic power, because what it does is it says it will not allow any country to stay in AGOA if that country acts in a way that is contrary to the interests of the United States. That's not the exact language. But what it means is it pulls countries closer towards it through trade. If they behave badly, it can then use this to discipline them. Does it come with any economic cost to the US? It allows our goods into their markets tariff-free. Does it have any impact on their businesses at all?
Well, Stephen, just before we go there, the one thing that I would venture is, whilst you say it's an instrument or even a weapon, it's one that we have blunted simply through the fact that South Africa, has not been an active participant in this. You're hard pressed to find instances and examples of South African industry with surging exports to the United States. If it was the case, then this would be a very, very sharp instrument. What it is I think it's a lost opportunity for South Africa if we use the other lens, the other perspective, and ask what is it for the United States. Here, this too, I think, is regularly lost on South African policymakers. Is the world, not just the US, is spoilt for choice in looking for partners to trade, in particular in semi-manufactured, manufactured goods. There are a few elements that South Africa has which are somewhat unique to us, but overarchingly, these are not channels that we've exploited or engaged to any great benefit to South Africa, and for that exact reason, the US will easily be able to shop around and find others.
Does AGOA come with a cost to the US economy? I mean, does it bring any cost to their businesses?
The U.S. economy it ranks depending on whether you use just nominal GDP or purchasing power parity. It ranks either as the largest or the second largest, swapping places with China for China becoming the biggest if we use PPP. So, we can preface all of this in saying the U.S. as approximately the largest economy in the world is surprisingly closed, that no more than 10% of GDP is made up of exports and imports. And in that 10%, South Africa is a fraction of a fraction. Africa is a fraction of a fraction. And that means the removal of specific countries from AGOA providing goods to the United States would be very, very modest in terms of the loss and the cost that they would pay at the margin. At most, really the thing that Africa holds in terms of trade channels are specific metals and minerals that are of interest and benefit to American industry.
Professor Adrian Saville, thank you very much indeed. Professor in Economics, Finance and Strategy at the Gibbs Business School and at the Rotman School. You were there, SAFM, 28 after 7.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Our rugby players face Ireland again.
Again, it's the Blitzbokke, and we've got Roscoe Speckman's magic on the field, and that's set to shine in the encounter with Ireland. That's tomorrow, Paris Olympics action. Now, Speckman is known for his speed and agility, which is unmatched, and fans are eager to see him in action. Now, the player, together with the coach Philip Snyman, are determined to settle scores after a narrow loss to Ireland in Madrid last month. Here's Speckman.
Our team will always be behind us because they like the energy that this team bring to them, and I know they will be awake when Speck Magic is doing his thing, and when Speck Magic is there on the field, they know it's always a magic moment.
Let's go to soccer. Reigning PSL champions Mamelodi Sundowns have appointed Frenchman Romain Folz as their new assistant coach. Folz, who previously led Amazulu and Maruma Gallants, joins a robust technical team led by newly promoted head coach Manoba Ngiti. Elsewhere, Aston Villa signed the Belgium midfielder Amadou Onana from Everton in a deal worth a reported £50 million, around 1.1 billion rand. Onana agreed a 5-year contract with Villa, who have been searching for a replacement for Douglas Luiz after the Brazilians moved to Juventus. Cricket, English cricket chiefs confirming they have held talks with Indian Premier League owners about acquiring a stake in their domestic 100 competition, the fourth edition of the controversial 100 balls per side tournament, which features 8 specifically created teams, each with a men's and women's side instead of the traditional 18 first-class English counties, starts today. The future remains uncertain, though, with the England and Wales Cricket Board looking to secure private investment. And finally, Sports Minister Gator McKenzie has announced his ambitious goal to bring Formula One back to South Africa. McKenzie, who calls his tenure a failure if he doesn't succeed, has already set up meetings with key stakeholders starting in Monaco. That's in August. The last F1 race in South Africa was at Kyalami in 1993. If successful, this could mark a historic return of one of the biggest sporting events to our country. That's how we wrap up Sport on Sunrise. More top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. We'll hear from Becky Mtolo. He'll have a chance to respond to Nahau in the next half hour. You're with SFM leading the conversation, 7:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, the ANC's disciplinary hearing against former party president Jacob Zuma is expected to resume today on a virtual platform. Zuma has been charged under Rule 25 of the ANC's constitution for endorsing the MK party ahead of the May general elections. A fifth suspect has been arrested in connection with the multi-billion rand drugs lab in Grootes, Limpopo. The suspect, age 44, will face charges of manufacturing and dealing in drugs when he appears in court soon. And the left lane on the N1 highway inbound to Cape Town remains closed in the area of Sable Road near Century City. This follows the flooding on the road due to the wetlands in the areas having reached its capacity. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
This traffic report is driven by performance. Be prepared to perform with Bridgestone.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Heavy traffic on Joburg's N1 North today. It's a crash before the Winnie Mandela off-ramp at Four Ways. Traffic is backlogging all the way through to 14th Avenue. So if you're coming up from Ridderport, Soweto, Suds, or Wall of traffic to work through all the way to Four Ways. Also some problems east of town, a breakdown at Atlas Road on the N12 westbound. Atlas Road's heavy right back through Benoni to Pitfontein. And there's some roadworks and a breakdown between Bupsfontein Road and the airport. So the R21 is under a couple of queuing pressure zones there. Collision scene on the N14, the Benscriven Highway just south of Jean Avenue. Now, southbound traffic is still being held up, but northbound is very heavily disrupted. So both the directions on that section of the N14 between Jean Avenue and Brockfontein interchange, very heavy, particularly running northbound. The N1 South looks like something's just happened before Rigel Avenue, traffic pushing back towards the Linwood Road exit. R34, we're keeping you up to date with this, speaking to people that are in this queue. There is no movement between Ndundulu and Mpangeni. The roadway is blocked, and we're also just seeing that the road that comes from Melmoth down into Ndundulu, that section of the 34 or 66, if you like, is also under some queuing pressure. So good idea if you need to go Melmoth, Mpangeni to travel later today. And just on that story with the Cape Town flooding in one you heard about in the news report there, it's interesting phenomenon this morning because motorists are aware of what they're going to go through on the N1 after doing it yesterday. So they're just hitting alternative routes in big numbers. So there's two stories. The N1 inbound stays heavy from Belleville, from Durban Road right through to Sable Road and Century City, but it's the alternative routes. It's the local routes through Goodwood, through Monte Vista, through Panorama and through Edgemead that are really badly backed up. Motorists don't want to run super late as they did yesterday on the N1, so instead they're just jamming up all those alternatives. Make sure you've got plenty of time to get through that part of Cape Town. It really is heavy. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This traffic report is driven by performance. Be prepared to perform with Bridgestone. Be prepared to perform with Bridgestone. Purchase 2 or more tyres at participating dealers and stand a chance to win your share of 2 million rand worth of Samsung products ranging from phones, tablets and TVs. Enter now at bridgestone.co.za. T's and C's apply. Bridgestone. Prepare to perform.
The business update on SAFM.
In Tarling, morning again. How are the markets?
Starting in Asia, most stocks in that region slightly recovered as some calmness returned following political uncertainty in the US. Traders, however, now are turning their focus to upcoming tech earnings. With that, we saw the Asia Dow up 0.7%, while most stocks in China slipped. The Shanghai Index down 0.55%. In Wall Street, US futures in the meantime are in the red. This after a strong finish yesterday that saw a return to tech stocks. On the local front, we saw markets kick off the week on a positive note, with the all-share closing higher, up 0.71%. Looking at your currency action, the local unit quite steady ahead of the local inflation print, sitting at 18.25 to the dollar.
And Sasol says that the turnaround efforts at Transnet are beginning to pay off.
That's right, Stephen. It says that it delivered higher coal exports during its annual period. Export sales volumes increased by 5% compared with the 2023 financial year. And this was driven by increased production at its Tubelisha colliery and improved Transnet freight rail performance. The upbeat coal unit performance boosted its mining division, with total mining productivity for the 2024 full year coming in 3% higher than the corresponding 2023 period. Now, Sasol's overall energy business made progress in the fourth quarter with improvements in mining, gas, and secunda operations. Despite these gains and a strong oil price, the company is still facing challenges in its liquids fuels segment due to lower diesel margins and increasing costs. Even though the upbeat was a bit of a mixed bag, markets welcomed it, with Sasol's share price up 6.5% in yesterday's close.
And then then Amplat says its demerger from Anglo American is on track.
That's right. And as it prepares to be a standalone entity, it's considering its options to deepen liquidity. And so the platinum miner is eyeing a secondary listing on the London Stock Exchange. Company CEO Craig Miller says that the company wants to broaden its investor base and attract international shareholders, particularly those who prefer UK-listed entities. Now, the potential listing is expected to enhance Amplat's visibility and credibility in global markets, providing the company with financial flexibility. The company also aims to mitigate potential risks of capital outflow as it transitions from the umbrella of Anglo to being a standalone. The news comes alongside its interim results, where it reported an 18% decline in earnings. So this was mainly due to downbeat PGM prices and once-off restructuring costs. Investors shrugging off those downbeat numbers and pegging their hopes on the company's future plans. This saw the share price close higher, up 3%.
Intaling, thank you. Intaling Lechela, business back with more business tomorrow and more news from the business world through the day here on SFM, 22 minutes to 8.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Well, lots to talk about this morning. You heard the conversations with the ANC in Joburg. They're working with Action SA. AGO is a big issue this morning. The NGOs issue in Gauteng, that's still a big issue. We'll hear more from the Higher Education Department in a moment. They'll respond to the reporting that 580 million rand was returned to the National Treasury because they couldn't spend it first. Mbona in Mahakeng, Dr. John Hlope. Mbona, good morning.
Good morning.
Go for it. Your view.
Yes. AfriForum got nothing to do with John Hlope, because John Hlope, you don't have any criminal record that can stop him to attend into any whatsoever position in this country. The kangaroo court of commissions that fund John Hlope something to do with JSE. It was wrong.
Why was it wrong, Mbona? It was the Judicial Conduct Committee. Why was it wrong?
It was wrong because, you see, the case against him comes from arms deal. And the arms deal case been for decades now. Understand? So it cannot be John Hlope not representing whatever he wished to be in his life. Because
Mbona, you're going to have to explain this to me, okay? You're talking about, first, there was the judgment in the Sheikh trial that found that a former president, that basically Shabir Sheikh had paid money corruptly to now former President Jacob Zuma. He wasn't a former president then. Then, as I understand the timeline, there was the attempt by the state to prosecute Jacob Zuma. It was during that time there were cases at the Constitutional Court, and Hlophe was found by the Judicial Conduct Tribunal of actually interfering in that process. So where did the tribunal go wrong, Mbona? You have to actually explain it to me.
Because if tribunal was correct, you could find John Sophie with a criminal record.
No, but it's Mbona, it's not a criminal record from a tribunal. That's only from a court, and that didn't happen in this case.
So if it did not happen, why you can be questioned if you're having any position?
Well, this is the debate that we're having, and we'll find out when the court rules. But you can't say the tribunal was wrong. You've got to base that on evidence.
Because if a tribunal was not wrong, then you could find him with a criminal record.
No, Mbona, I'm sorry. I think you've misunderstood the process, I'm afraid, and I'm sorry to say that. But the tribunal does not give you a criminal record. It makes a finding and you're removed as a judge, and that's what's happened. Vusi in Midrand. Hello, Vusi.
Morning, Steve. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Vusi. How are you?
Yeah. Look, Steve. I think now enough is enough about the DA, because the DA starts to peddle as if they're the one who is in charge, as if they've won elections. You go national, the crisis is DA. You go provincial, the crisis is DA. You go even a local government, you still have the DA as the problem. Look, Steve, DA has not won any election. Let's start there. So there's no way in which the ruling party and other political parties can be held hostage by the DA. Number one, DA in Tshwane. Look how DA is failing in Tshwane. Tshwane is crumbling in the hands of the DA. But the media wants to portray DA as the best thing which has ever.
I don't think the media necessarily does that.
No. Yeah, but no. Look, Steve. There's supposed to be a time whereby the media is supposed to call DA into order, because you cannot have the DA stifling the development in this country, whereby when there's supposed to be a coalition, when supposed to be an agreement, the crisis is going to be the DA. Why?
Yeah, I don't think that's the case, Vusi. I was asking questions based on the ANC's own statements. That's really the point. I was looking for consistency, and that's what journalists often do. You look for the inconsistency and you push there, and that's what I did.
Okay, no, it's fine. Mara, here is another dimension regarding the issue of the DA.
Okay, 10 seconds, Vusi,
the DA, why don't they accept that they are not going to be party to some of the coalition, more especially in Gauteng? That's why I respect Panyaza. Because Panyaza said, enough is enough. We can run this thing without the DA. Because the DA showed to fail in most part of the Gauteng.
Okay, no, Vusi, thank you. On the line from Midrand, interesting question. JCK and Musina, hi. You want to talk about crime in South Africa?
Yeah, Steve, good morning. Are you well?
I'm well, JCK. Go for it.
And I heard you are leaving. Before I can talk, I heard you are leaving. We are going to miss you dearly.
Thank you, JCK.
I'm telling you.
Thank you.
Mara, wishing you the best.
Thank you. That's very kind, JCK. I'm going to miss you too. Yeah. All right, make your point. Yeah.
Yeah. Steve, what you call? We are living at the mercy of the criminals today, all because of the ANC. They didn't do the right thing first time. Steve, we must tell each other truth. I'm running now 5-9. I'm going to 6-0. I know what everything happened during apartheid. And not everything under apartheid was evil. No, not everything. During apartheid, they knew who is in South Africa and who is going out of the country. But now with the ANC, they don't know who is in and who is going out of the country. Do you understand? And with the crime, you understand? During those times of national, I'm sorry to say that, but we are no more safe. Today we are dying in democracy. Instead of democracy, we're supposed to be free.
Yeah.
But during apartheid, we were free. Criminals have to think twice before they commit anything. But today, criminals do as hell and bang for all.
All right, JCK, thank you. Sorry about that. I'm going to stop that there. Apologies. I don't know if I misheard, but sounded like it should not have been said on the radio. I don't think I think it's very difficult to compare. Let me just say that. And I don't think that it was necessarily safe during the apartheid era for many people. Also depended where you were. So we need to be very careful when you compare. 60 minutes to 8.
Shopping sprees. Catching flights while others catch feelings. Shaking that thing while sipping on some bubbles on a yacht in Dubai. Some call it living soft. You know, dough for dough. Tune into Sugar Baby Dating, a highly revealing documentary that lifts the lid of the sugar baby dating phenomenon and talks to girls who have a string of rich older men funding their lifestyles and the women that feel damaged by the whole experience. This Thursday at 10 p.m. Is it just a little frivolous fun? Or is there a sinister side to sugar baby dating? Channel your inner curiosity with Sugar Baby Dating, 11 July at 10 p.m. Only on S3. Open up. S3.
The incredible story is written by the classical performance of a magnificent Olympian. Josiah Tugwani painted Atlanta in the colors of Africa Borwa. He took center stage and rounded off a memorable Olympics in style. Tugwani emerged victorious in a 124-man battlefield from 79 countries to claim gold in just 3 seconds. Every countryman wants a medallion. Ezekiel Sibeng delivered silver in the men's 800 meters. Marianne Kriel joined the podium with a collection of bronze in the women's 100-meter backstroke. Magical moments of the Olympics. Brought to you by SABC Sport, proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. For the love of the game.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
14 minutes to 8 the time. Good morning. Yesterday you heard the reports that the Department of Higher Education had to return 580 million rand to the National Treasury. That was a culmination of 2 financial years. This is money that was not spent. This came, we understand, from Dr. Mami Gondwe, who's the Deputy Minister of Higher Education from the Democratic Alliance. At the time, this happened, Bladen Zamande was the minister. Lucien Kearns is the Chief Financial Officer for the Department of Higher Education and Trading. Lucien, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, good morning to yourself, Stephen, and to your listeners.
Is it true that your department returned 580 million rand to the National Treasury?
Stephen, yes. For the 2 financial years, the first year was 22-23, it was 462 million, and last year's 117 over those 2 financial years. But also, like I've said in the previous prior interview, that is money that obviously is allocated per economic classification, and therefore those are not just funds that one can apply anywhere as desired. It was predominantly for vacancies that were not filled in that year. Predominantly, I think, for example, of the 462, 400 was for vacancies in that first year. The 22-23 that was spoken of. But also, like I've said, in the overall budget of the department is quite huge. Probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest. It's 130 for 23-24 was 130 billion rand, and therefore for the 2 financial years in question, 22-23, our spending was 99.6%. And for the 23-24 financial year, it was 99.9%. Now, one can just imagine just 1%, or a portion of a percentage that has such a huge rand value to it. But that puts it in perspective, I think, Stephen.
Okay, so you're saying you couldn't just take the money from unfilled vacancies that was lying there because you hadn't filled those positions and then spend it on students. You couldn't change the allocation.
No. If you look at, for example, funds or budget that's allocated to compensation of employees, or what we call COE, that's kept money, and it's earmarked funds, so you can't just apply it elsewhere. That if you have a saving there, that you just apply it elsewhere. Yeah.
What do you need 400 more people for? I mean, your department is, I've never worked in your department, but it's largely administrative, I would have thought. I mean, unless these are positions at universities that you, or other higher education bodies that you include in this.
Yes, absolutely. Like I've said, the establishment of the department is huge. And it includes our, because the entities as well. We work with the CETs and the TVETs. Their posts are also advertised through the department. So you're talking about those particular posts as well, including the head office that's included there. Now, main posts, for example, if one looks at the college, are principals, deputy principals, and campus managers. If you look at the head office, for example, together with its main entities or its bigger entities, the NSF, and NSFAS. So it's quite huge. It's more than 30,000 on the establishment, well over that amount, Stephen, that one speaks of. And it covers the entire PC, what we call the PSET, or post-secondary education training, a sector that it covers.
We see. So I appreciate your point, and you've explained it. I think you've given us a lot of clarity on this. It's still, I think, to a lot of people, it's 580 million rand that's basically been wasted. I realize it goes back to the fiscus, but that's kind of not the point. Then we see what happened with NSFAS, which everything had to sort of be changed. I suppose the question becomes, Lucian, is the department actually managing its money correctly? Is it actually able to manage the money that it has and do that effectively for students?
Yeah, I think, Stephen, again, if one has a conversation on the NSFAS and student, that is a separate conversation, because that is obviously dedicated funding that goes to student learning. And I think for last 23-24 financial year, we're speaking about something like 46, almost 47 billion rand that goes to that pocket for NSFAS. The funds that you're speaking about, whether it's applied correctly, again, I'm going to say, in fact, the 22-23 financial year, if one can say, moving from a 99.6 to a 99.9%, and also the vacancies that we've moved from that year was 13.4 till just over less than 10%. Now, incrementally, we're trying to close the gap, because those are the things that one needs to get those targets right. No uncertain terms justifying or accepting or condoning that one wants to surrender funds to National Treasury. But given the size of the budget, a percentage, again, I'm saying a percentage of a budget, less than one, makes a huge amount of money that one can apply. What I can also confirm, I think I also want to separate what we have as projects, that those are also not affected, and we've kept clear in most regard as that is concerned. That would be my response for now, Stephen.
Thank you very much indeed. Do appreciate the time. It's a very, very interesting situation developing here. Lucian Kearns is the Chief Financial Officer in the acting capacity in the Department of Higher Education and Training. 8 minutes to 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Just right on the N14, driving into Pretoria, it's a fatal collision on the northbound side before Jean Avenue. So if you're on your way up through Midrand or coming up from Krugersdorp side on the N14, just avoid a turn through Brockfontein onto the N14. Just push up, exit at Boerta Avenue, exit at the R21 and hit some alternative routes. Avoid the N14 through to Jean. It's very heavy. Big backlog still with us on the N1 North, approaching four ways this morning. All lanes have been open at a crash scene, but the traffic's all the way back halfway between Beyers-Naudé and 14th Avenue. Just a long trip up from Soweto through four ways this morning. And the breakdown on the N12 at Atlas Road still there, so traffic coming through from Pitfontein and Davidton. Very heavy queues from the Pitfontein Road through Snake Road through Tom Jones and in towards that Boksburg area. Some big traffic that side. Situation between Empangeni and Ndundulu's just got a lot worse. There's some more protesting now just north of Empangeni. A truck is being commandeered and pulled across the roadway. Then you've got protesting halfway through between Empangeni and Ndundulu, and the route coming from Melmoth, the R34 R66 route into that Ndundulu split is heavily backed up as well. Anyone with plans to travel Melmoth through to Empangeni, do it later this morning. You're just simply not going to get through at this stage, protesting at multiple locations and multiple blockages. Cape Town, big traffic on the not only the N1 inbound towards the flooded section at Canal Walk, but what we're seeing this morning is the phenomenon of the alternative routes being heavily jammed. Motorists that got caught yesterday have made a decision not to get caught again and moving on to the alternative local routes in big numbers. Routes like Hilbeson, Edgemead Drive, Bosmansdam Road, Voortrekker Road, Viking Way, Frans Conradi. Those routes sort of run parallel or take you into Century City and Montague Gardens, or take you through Goodwood and Kensington towards the CBD, avoiding the N1, heavily backed up. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Stay on top of all meaningful, top trending stories right here on SAFM. Leading the conversation.
Good morning, 6 minutes to 8 the time. Well, yesterday you heard from Ayanda Zulu, the Provincial Secretary of Nahawu in Gauteng. You may remember the conversation. They referred to Becky Mtolo, the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Secretary, as a madman. They said he was demented, someone with a history of mental health. This was because, they say, he said over the weekend that members of Nahawu were responsible for bad government services at places like Home Affairs, SASSA offices and the Labour Department. I had a big argument with him about using the phrase madman. I thought that for a progressive union, a union that claims to be progressive, to use that phrase was incorrect. Becky Mtolo is the Provincial Secretary of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal. A chance to give him a right of reply. Becky, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to your viewers.
Well, it's sort of vaguely entertaining. Are you going to apologise to Nahawu for what you said? You started all of this.
No, don't apologize for the truth, Stephen. That is not how, when we joined the struggle, we were nurtured and trained. That you don't apologize for the truth. Those who were tortured, who were arrested, who were detained without trial, they did not apologize because they knew that apartheid was not what was supposed to be, and they stood for the truth until they were proven that they were correct in 1994. That apartheid ought to end.
Okay, so you say Nahawu members are responsible for the bad services government, people get in government offices. What do you base that on? What evidence do you have of that?
Stephen, let me just take you back. They now had a political school, and then they bash the ANC. They say the ANC has sold out black people because of the partners it has chosen to work within the national government of national unity. And then they've been peddling this lie for the longest time, and nobody has ever have courage to contest them, and also show that they are propagating of so much love for so-called black people is not based on evidence. Then I was trying to say to the community I was addressing, because that was my branch. It was my branch meeting of the ANC. I was saying, now why it project that it loves black people is the same now when you go to a hospital. Its members treat you badly. They don't give you enough service. It's the same now when you go to clinics. When every time when you come to your meetings, you complain about how bad you are treated in clinics, how bad you are treated in Home Affairs. It's the same now when I was a mayor in Kokstad. Families could not bury their loved ones at a scheduled time, at certain particular weekend, because they were treated badly. They could not get a death certificate, and then they could not get burial orders. It's the same now that during the strike in KwaZulu-Natal, they removed a sick baby from an ambulance, rushed to Grace Hospital. It's the same now that was blocking all hospitals, so that the very same poor, the very same black people who can't afford private hospitals, who are relying on the public health facilities, they were stopped almost a week to access those services. Then the love that they project of black people is not based on evidence. Their behavior is in serious variance on that. But we're also saying, it's not like SATU, for example. Let's go to SATU in the basic education, SATU and NATO. SATU and NATO can say they are clear, they can go to schools. Schools in South Africa, their normal hours ended too. But you will know that in rural schools, particularly where they predominantly in townships that they serve black people, SATU and NATO, while they contest each other, but they agree on improving the life of a black child, they will go in extra hours, they will go to winter schools, winter camps, and they've improved the results, and they will never want overtime, they will never want to be extra paid. They do that as a service because they don't commodify society. They don't see society as a commodity that in saving society they must gain extra than what they should get.
Okay, Becky, I think you've made your point. They said that you were a madman. You told them yesterday to go and jump off a cliff. And you're all part of the same alliance, right? Just to be clear, this is how friends speak about friends.
Listen, Stephen. You must know that in a public discourse and a debate, once you win the debate in terms of intellectual argument, logical argument, the only thing that is available to your opponent is insults. Then we're part of that. We've been insulted for many times since we're young. We're older now. Then we don't have to respond to insults. But it's a show that if they can't contest what I'm saying, because you can go to any township, Stephen. I can tell you, go to Soweto, just get 500 people, ask them how are they treated in hospitals, how are they treated in clinics. Old mothers there, they will tell you horrible stories. I'm talking about black, poor old mothers. They will tell you about horrible stories, how members treat them in hospitals and in clinics.
Thank you very much indeed. Bheki Mtolo is the Provincial Secretary of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal. All right, do you go with Bheki Mtolo? Do you agree with him that Nahawu members are responsible for what happened? Do you go the other way? Nahawu claimed yesterday that this was because of austerity. You know the number, 086 000 2032. You're with SFM leading the conversations, 8 o'clock.
In our top stories, ANC's disciplinary hearing against Zuma to resume and Kamala Harris secures enough support to win presidential nomination. Good morning. The ANC's disciplinary hearing against former party president Jacob Zuma is expected to resume today on a virtual platform. Zuma has been charged under Rule 25 of the ANC's constitution for endorsing the MK party ahead of the May general elections. Proceedings against Zuma were postponed last week so that outcomes of the hearing could be communicated to him by his representative and former ANC NEC member Tony Yengeni. Sibahle Mota reports.
Zuma, who is being represented by former ANC NEC member Tony Yengeni, has argued that the hearing against him should be held in person. The former ANC president states that the provisions of the ANC constitution allow him to appear before the National Disciplinary Committee in person. Zuma has also requested that the hearing should be made public, a request that has been vehemently rejected by the party. The ANC maintains that the disciplinary hearing against the MK leader will neither be held in person nor be made public. I am Sibahle Mota in Johannesburg.
The DA has launched an urgent interdict before the Western Cape High Court against Umkhonto we Sizwe parliamentary leader Dr. John Hlophe's designation to the Judicial Service Commission. The party is one of several that objected to Hlophe's election to the JSC, while the ANC and EFF are among those who voted in favour of the move. The JSC is scheduled to sit in October to interview and make recommendations to President Cyril Ramaphosa on who to appoint, including Hlophe's previous position as Judge President of the Western Cape Division. Zoleka Kodashe reports.
The DA's application is in two parts. Part A seeks an urgent interdict against Hlophe from taking up a seat in the JSC, while Part B is a review application seeking to set aside the decision of the National Assembly to designate Hlophe as a representative at the JSC. The party argues that Hlophe's participation in the JSC would render any recommendation it makes to the president as unlawful and undermine the integrity of the body. It therefore seeks to prevent Hlophe from serving on the JSC until the legality of his election to the commission is determined by the court.
A fifth suspect arrested in connection with the multi-billion rand drugs laboratory in Grootes, Limpopo, is this morning expected to appear before the local magistrates' court. The suspect, aged 44, is facing various charges, including manufacturing and dealing in drugs. The four other accused had their case postponed to the 1st of next month for bail application. The Hawk spokesperson, Katlego Mogale.
The fifth suspect in the clandestine drug discovery will be appearing in the Grootes District Court this morning on charges of manufacturing, dealing, and possession of illicit drugs.
The left lane on the N1 highway inbound to Cape Town remains closed in the area of Sable Road near Sanctuary City. This follows the flooding on the road due to the wetlands in the area having reached its capacity. The lane closure has affected the traffic flow. The City of Cape Town has urged motorists to exercise caution and encourage them to find alternative routes. Further afield, and finally, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris has secured the support of enough delegates to win the Democratic presidential candidacy just more than a day after Joe Biden stepped out of the race and endorsed her. She is now expected to be officially confirmed in a roll call vote in early August. Earlier, Harris kicked off her campaign, telling supporters in Delaware that she would take the Democrats to victory in November's election. The BBC's Sarah Smith has the details.
Ms. Harris pledged to unite the Democratic Party, and she started making the case as to why she was the best person to take on Donald Trump. She said in her previous roles as a courtroom prosecutor she had taken on predators who'd abused women and fraudsters who'd ripped off consumers, and that she knew Donald Trump's type. The Republican nominee seems deeply frustrated that he's no longer running against Joe Biden, calling to be reimbursed for the money he'd spent fighting the president. Ms. Harris has received a record amount of donations in the last 24 hours, over $81 million.
Recapping the top story, the ANC's disciplinary hearing against former party president Jacob Zuma is expected to resume today on a virtual platform. Zuma has been charged under Rule 25 of the ANC's constitution for endorsing the MK party ahead of the May general elections. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, we're building up to the Paris Olympics as athletes call for peace from the Paris village. And we also have golf. Tiger Woods' son Charlie crashes at the US Junior Amateur Championships. All these stories and more just before 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Avoid the N14, Ben Scriven Highway towards Central Pretoria. A fatal crash at Jean Avenue is probably likely to be there for a while. The traffic is all the way back into the N1 Brockfontein interchange. The N12 from Pitfontein through to Boksburg's heavy around the breakdown at Atlas Road. And the N1 North still jam-packed from 14th Avenue up to an earlier crash at Willie Mandela. Protesting at multiple locations this morning between Melmoth and Mpangeni. In some cases, taxis blockading the road. In other cases, they've used and pulled trucks across the road to blockade it all. SAPs are on the scene. They are busy clearing it. Some of the route is being reopened. I think still a good plan to travel at Melmoth Mpangeni later today. The N3 from Pavilion to Sherwood Junction through Spaghetti Junction, that's all very heavily backed up. And as you heard in the news, motorists being urged to use alternative routes into Cape Town to beat the flooding on the N1, and they are doing that in big numbers this morning. Yesterday we saw an extremely heavily backed up N1. It's not so bad this morning. It's bad, but not as bad as yesterday. But the real story is the significant congestion on those alternative routes through Edgemead and Boorthasak and Panorama and Goodwood and Parow. Those routes, those major routes, Edgemead Drive, Bosman's Dam, Voortrekker, absolutely jam-packed. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7 minutes after 8. Good morning. You're with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. We'll find out a bit more about what's happening on Mars, in a little while. Life on Mars. Question mark. I should probably put at the end of that, or not. We'll be talking about that in the next little while. Looking forward to that. Are you or anyone you know a police reservist? Or are you or anyone you know one of these crime prevention wardens? How's all that going? We'll talk a bit more about crime and reservists and the whole system. We'll hear from a reservist from 8:30. That's your mediated conversation. I think it's going to be quite interesting and quite revealing as well. And then, of course, more your view. You heard Becky Mtolo there. That, war, fight, tiff, dispute, battle with Nahawu. Do you agree with him that Nahawu members are responsible for bad services in government entities and hospitals he spoke about specifically? I think there is some evidence of that. Do you go the other way? Are Nahawu members just the victims of austerity? The fact that government is not paying enough for positions. We heard exactly what happens when government positions are left unfilled with the Department of Higher Education as well. Good to hear from you. 086 000 2032. Good morning.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
Well, this conversation brought to you by the KZN Tourism and Film Authority. They've been supporting the Ilembe Story Lab, and all of this is part of the 12th edition of the Durban Film Mart. Various people from municipalities in the Ilembe district, that's KwaDukuza, Mandeni, Ndwedwe, and Mapumolo, have been benefiting from it, I should say. And each of the beneficiaries are given a mentor to guide and ensure the success of a story, and the person who wins gets an opportunity to write in the writing room of the SABC 1 Telenova Uzalo. And a big congratulations to Bonasiwe Mabono Ngomalo, who is the person who actually won. We'll speak to her now. Bonasiwe, good morning, and thanks very much indeed for your time this morning.
Thank you so much.
I'm just going to ask you to speak up as loudly as you can, please, Bonasiwe. Your journey, how did you enter the film industry? How did you get there?
First of all, I'm Bensi Manale, a writer from Mandeni area. You know, Mandeni is a small town in Ilembe district municipality in the KZN.
Bonasiwe, I'm so sorry. We can't hear you properly on this end. I'm not entirely sure why. Let's just see if we're able to get you back on a better line. But it is a conversation that we do want to have, and it is an important conversation, but we just do want to hear you clearly and just find out a little bit more about your journey. I mean, it's interesting to see, the stories that people are telling and what they tell us about our lives at the moment. Bonasiwe, back with us. Bonasiwe, hi.
Hello.
That's a little better, thank you. Your journey, how did you enter the film industry?
You know, I've entered in the film industry by applying to a post in Ilembe Story Lab script writers program under KZN Film Commission. You know, I've been selected on how to write a script, where we learned how to write a synopsis, major turning point, and the story outline. And now I've been mentored there by Tani Mungwe, a documentary film and a producer at Inwete and a housing retreat. That is how I entered.
Okay, and the story that you were writing, you pitched I think the phrase is pitched, right? You pitched a story. What was the story about?
So my story is, the title of my story is Standard of Fear, located in Inwete and Palito under Ilembe. My story is about a young village girl. Her name is Samuel. Started her first job at a call center insurance company as a call center agent. She faces initiative struggles with customer calls and stress over her sick grandmother. After confiding in Nogubonga, an old schoolmate friend, she successfully makes a sale, only to find it stolen by Sandy, so a top agent. Despite feeling cheated and unsupported by manager Kelvin, Sandy and Nokbonga's help proves her case through call recordings. Sandy so is forced now to apologize and return the incentive money, which Sandy used to buy medication for her sick grandmother.
So, Bonasiwe, I mean, in a way, it's a reflection on, and I know so many people who've had their first job in that industry, and it's really tough.
Of course it is, but not that much because I'm learning.
I'm talking about the people you're writing about, the core sale industry. I mean, it's a tough industry, that, isn't it? I mean, you're clearly writing about something that affects the lives of people. That this is about the real life of South Africans.
Yes, you know, I write about this because I also relate. So it's where I even reveal it through me.
And, I mean, for young black women in this industry, living in the rural areas of KwaZulu-Natal, industries that come from the KwaZulu-Natal tourism and film, how important have they been?
Pardon?
Your message for young black women in rural areas in KwaZulu-Natal, opportunities have been created by KZN Tourism and Film. How important have they been?
So, you know, the message I have for young black women, you know, must always have a dream of what you want to become or accomplish in life. Work hard on it towards, you know, for me to be recognized by KZN. It's a great opportunity. I was hungry and ready for it, so I took a chance because I believe in my dream. So So for young women, it doesn't matter who you are. What matters is what you want to become.
Well, thanks very much indeed, Bonasiwe. Really appreciate the time. Bonasiwe Mabona Ngomalo, the winner, of course, this year, and winning it from the KwaZulu-Natal Film Commission. And just interesting to see how all of this plays out. For more opportunities, you can follow social media, Facebook, YouTube, at KwaZulu-Natal Film Commission, Instagram, and on X at KZN Film. That conversation brought to you there by the KZN Tourism and Film Authority. 14 after 8.
At SFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes on Twitter.
We heard that conversation with Becky Mtolo a little while ago. Bekela on the line from Queenstown. Bekela, hi, good morning.
Morning, Stephen.
And what do you think? Which way do you go? Is he right? Now, how is responsible for bad services?
I'm 102% with Becky Mtolo.
Oh, really? Why?
I think, Stephen, you're going to see more of this because now the party is coming to an end.
Mm-hmm.
Remember what the SACP also said about the GNU?
Yeah.
Because they knew when the ANC wins, they got a seat on the table. Now we as the voters have disrupted that. Now they must also accept the outcomes of the results of the election. Honestly, Stephen, the hospitals are falling apart under the watch of Meao. We've got nurses there who are supposed to be essential services, who took oath to look after the sick people.
Yeah.
But they leave them there dying on the floors.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stephen.
All right, no, Bekela, I hear you. It's very interesting. Lots of directions this can go. Bekela goes with Becky Mtolo. Temba, do you go with Becky Mtolo or are you going with Nahau?
No, I'm not going with Becky Mtolo at all. All these boys, they should know that we can see them, that they are on the stage dancing to prove to the capital that they are willing and they are still selling out and they are willing to sell out even tomorrow. That's all what they are doing. They want to demonstrate to the capturers of our movement today that they are no longer revolutionaries. They are no longer revolutionaries.
You really think Becky Mtolo is no longer a revolutionary? I dare you to say that to him.
He's not. He's not the first one. He's not. Look at the statements that they are doing. Out of the blue, out of nowhere. They are not provoked by the union. You should ask him what was difficult for him over the years to make such a statement or observation. What was difficult for him over the years?
Okay.
But it's not that the organization has been captured by imperialists. They are now proving to imperialists that we are part of you. We are part of you by making this statement. Some of them, by the way, are facing criminal investigations.
Yeah.
We are asking AfriForum, why is it quiet now? They've asked someone who went overseas to Dubai with a credit card of a private business. They are quiet now. All these guys have got criminal charges following them, and they are dancing on the stage to prove to those that are supposed to prosecute them that they are with them, they are of value to them. They should stave off any prosecution towards them.
All right, no, Timber, I hear you. Okay, a strong view that way. Spool, do you go that way as well?
Stephen, unfortunately, I go that way.
Okay.
I have to say it was quite disingenuous of the speaker to blame Nehau for the failure in public health. Stephen, we need to talk the reality. They are jointly to blame, and government especially. You can't blame a union because the union isn't the one that is employing.
Mm-hmm.
You can't blame the union when there is a failure of leadership in public institutions because union doesn't train for leadership. You can't blame a nurse being incompetent because you couldn't send the nurse for training on the union. So it was quite disingenuous, and I think that it cost ANC a lot because as a person that is having love for the ANC, I just wonder that that person didn't represent my view as an ANC member.
All right. Thanks, Spoo, in the Free State. Soswabile in Bombela, Nelspruit. Soswabile, I mean, Becky Mtolo, okay, he's a strong character, a fiery character, but is he right to accuse Nahau like this?
I like it. I think he has put the nail on the head.
Okay.
These people, they pretend as if they do care much about the people of South Africa, which they don't care.
Yeah.
Because all the mess that we are seeing in the public space, that is where Nehau is organizing. And the kind of service delivery that we are complaining about each and every day,
most of the people who are there are members of NEHAU. Now that the ANC has formed a GNU because we were failed by the very same people who think that the ANC was not supposed to form a GNU. Because if they were giving the good service delivery to the people, we will not be where we are now. We are here because of their members who contributed to this. We are here because of the incompetent people that they fight for, especially those senior positions. To get senior positions, while those people, they know very well that they don't have qualification for those senior positions that they are fighting for them to get.
Yeah.
So definitely they need not come out and think that we are fools. We don't know what happened on the ground. On the ground, I like Begum Tolo.
Okay. All right, no. So
we need people like Begum Tolo who's going to put them in their place. Thank you very much.
He'll like hearing that. Swabile, thank you. Tabogo and Kuruman. Tabogo, hi.
Hi, Stephen. How are you?
Yeah, I'm well. Go for it.
Stephen, Begum Tolo is right and wrong. It is just like Cyril Ramaphosa when he was the deputy president. He did not see anything wrong with corruption. He did not see corruption. He did not smell corruption.
Right.
It was only when he was elected president that his eyes opened and he saw the 9 wasted years. But for 5 years, he was a deputy president. He saw everything. He kept quiet. Now, it's the same with Begum Tolo. The election has broken the glass. Now the glass is starting to splinter now. The alliance is going to splinter because what they saw and didn't do nothing. Their eyes are opening up now to see what they did see all along.
Okay.
Yes.
No, I hear you, Tabogo. That makes sense. All right, thank you. On the line from Kuruman. Well, strong views both ways about NEHAU and Begum Tolo. 21 minutes after 8.
Hey, want to check your TV license balance conveniently? Look no further. Our SMS service allows you to do just that. By sending a message containing your ID or TV license number to 44210, you can quickly access your balance without needing multiple inquiries or waiting on hold. Plus, standard SMS rates apply. Take advantage of this efficient method to stay informed and streamline your payment process today. T's and C's apply.
Greatness has a way of overcoming all the obstacles. South Africa is readmitted into the International Olympic Committee. The Afrika Dzonga flag was flown by marathoner Dan Dow at the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games Barcelona 1992. Elana Meyer rose to the occasion with a silver medallion in the women's 10,000 meters. While tennis doubles pairing of Wayne Ferreira and Pete Norval grabbed another silver.
Second and silver medalist representing South Africa,
Wayne Ferreira and Pete Norval.
Team Africa Chipembe. Magical moments of the Olympics. Brought to you by SABC Sport, proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024.
For the love of the game.
The Science of Life on SAFM.
22 after 8. Well, news in the last week that the Curiosity rover, which is the NASA's rover on the planet of Mars, by accident revealed yellowish-green crystals which appear to be made, it seems, of pure sulfur. Professor Martin Snowes, a solar expert, professor in the astronomy department at the University of the Western Cape and research chair in space weather with an emphasis on solar physics at SANSA, that's the South African National Space Agency. Professor Snow, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. What are these crystals? What do we know about them so far?
It appears to be pure sulfur, which was not really expected. They've looked at all the rocks that they've been driving over for the last couple of years and see things that have sulfur compounds. But on Earth here, the only places where you get big chunks of pure sulfur like that are like at hydrothermal vents or something like that. So that would indicate that this part of Mars used to be more volcanic and had a lot of hot water pouring out for eons.
So we know it was definitely have been water. Only water could have created this?
Yeah, at least, based on our understanding of the way rocks work here on Earth, it would had to have been from hot water. There are a lot of other geological things on Mars that also had to only occur from water, those stones being rounded or things like that. So, this is another instance of a lot of hot water on Mars.
People keep looking for life on Mars or evidence that there used to be life on Mars. But Mars has no real atmosphere, and it doesn't really have an atmosphere because it doesn't have a magnetic field. And if it doesn't have a magnetic field, it could never have had a proper atmosphere. And if it doesn't have a proper atmosphere, it couldn't sustain life. So, Professor, why am I wrong? What have I missed? Why are we still searching for life if it doesn't have a magnetic field?
Well, it used to have a better atmosphere, but you're right that the magnetic field that protects our atmosphere on Earth isn't there on Mars. So over time, the atmosphere has been eroded away and is very thin now, and can't support life at the moment, but it could have in the past. And, that's one of the reasons why you go and study a planet, is to figure out, well, how does that work over time? What happens if the magnetic field on the Earth decreases? How long does it take for the atmosphere to be affected, and so on? So there's lots of questions that could be really important for the Earth that we can learn about by studying Mars.
For example, as I understand it, you'll know better than I if this is true, our magnetic field has reversed polarity many, many times, and we don't know why, and we don't know when it will do it again.
That is exactly true. It has reversed. You can see the magnetic signature in old rocks and so on. So it has flipped over several times, and we think it might be due to happen again, but we don't really know why it happens. So that makes it hard to predict when it's going to happen. But there have been changes in the magnetic field, small ones so far. The poles are moving a little bit, and so we don't know if we're on the brink of something happening, in 10 years or 1,000 years. It kind of makes a big difference if it's going to be 1,000 years from now versus next year, right?
There's another thing about how science sort of works, I'm talking about these rocks were discovered almost through an accidental discovery. It's not entirely accidental, though, because the rover's been driving around kind of deliberately looking for certain things and going to places that kind of look interesting. It spent a lot of time in one place, as I understand it. How often does it happen that science kind of makes huge progress through accident, but it's actually about being in the right place at the right time?
Well, yes, you're exactly right that it's being in the right place at the right time. The rover was actually headed to go look at some other part of this big mountain that it's been exploring, and it just happened to run over some of these rocks. And sulfur is not a strong substance, so when it ran it over, this rover is pretty big, right? It's the size of my VW. It crushed some of the rocks, and it just happened to. The cameras typically look around while it's driving, and they saw it's like, wait, we ran over something. Let's go look at that. And so it is sort of by happenstance, but then again, we had a rover on Mars, so we're in the right place at the right time and so on. But it is a case of exploring, so you don't know exactly what you're going to find at any time. You just have to always be alert to try and understand what you do see.
Professor Martin Snope, thank you. A solar expert, professor in the astronomy department at the University of the Western Cape and research chair in space weather, particularly in solar physics at the South African National Space Agency. You're with SAFM, 28 minutes after 8, down here on Earth.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. The Olympic athletes call for peace from the Paris village here and on Mars.
Yes, indeed, with the IOC president backing them, Thomas Bach calling as well, mentioning that these athletes are peace ambassadors of our time. Now, wearing scarves and holding flags with the message "Give peace a chance," the athletes highlighted sport's role in fostering peace and understanding. Here's IOC President Thomas Bach.
Today, you, the Olympic athletes, you are the peace ambassadors of our time. You are coming from the territories of all 206 national Olympic committees and the IOC Refugee Olympic team. As inspiring ambassadors, you make the Olympic Games into a symbol of peace.
Staying with the Olympics, SA long jumper Johan van Vuuren is quietly confident he can be one of the dark horses at the Olympic Games in Paris. The Bloemfontein-born athlete is making his first appearance at the multi-sport event. Given his personal best jump of 8.30 meters, Van Vuuren says anything can happen.
If you look at the world top list now at this moment, like the distances between first in the world and being sixth in the world is like 10 centimeters. So there's a huge room for improvement for me, because this is the first time competing in a 2.5 each.
Moving to some other action, and that's the Blitzboks. They're set to make waves at the Paris Olympics. The men's rugby sevens team will face off against Ireland in their first match tomorrow. That's at 5:30 in the afternoon. Now, the Tour de France winner Tadej Pogačar has withdrawn from the Paris Olympics due to extreme fatigue. His team announced the decision, highlighting Pogačar's need for rest after his grueling Tour de France cycling victory. This unexpected turn leaves a significant gap in the Olympic cycling lineup. And finally, golf. Charlie Woods, son of the legend Tiger Woods, faced a tough day at the US Junior Amateur Championship, shooting a 12-over par 82 in the first round. Despite birding both par 5 holes, Charlie's round included 4 bogeys and 5 double bogeys, leaving him near the bottom of the field. Tiger Woods was on the course supporting his son, although he couldn't serve as his caddy due to tournament rules. The young Woods has another round to improve his position in a field of 264 golfers, all vying for 64 spots in the match-playing competition, which starts tomorrow. That's a wrap on Sunrise. More sport on SFM around 12:30. I'm Zai Khan.
Would you know it? Thanks very much indeed, Zai. In a moment, police reservists. That's next. You're with SFM leading the conversation, 8:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, the National Union of Mine Workers has expressed concern over looming job cuts in mining giant Anglo American Platinum. This after Amplats finalized its retrenchment process, with 3,700 jobs expected to be affected across its operations in South Africa. The ANC's disciplinary hearing against former party president Jacob Zuma is expected to resume today on a virtual platform. Zuma has been charged under Rule 25 of the ANC's constitution for endorsing the MK party ahead of the May general elections. And the founder of the South Korean tech giant Kakao has been arrested on charges of manipulating stock prices related to its takeover of the K-pop agency SM Entertainment last year. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still fairly sluggish and slow on the M1 North from Beyers Naudé up to William Mandela. An earlier crash on the side of the highway, plus there's issues with the traffic lights still as you come off the highway onto William Mandela. They haven't worked for the longest time. It's a major junction, northern parts of Joburg, so it really needs a bigger dose of attention. But that N1 North is slow, southbound slow as well, coming from Rivonia Road. The R24 coming from Edenvale onto the N12, slow after an earlier truck crash. All lanes are open, but still an active scene. And avoid the N14 into Pretoria, fatal crash before Jean Avenue, backlogging from the N1 Bruckfontein. You've got options there. You could come off at Borta Avenue or off at the R21 and go to Pretoria that way. Durban, the M4, the Ruthurst Highway, crash scene near Virginia Airport. Quite heavy backlogs between Durban and Mhlanga, both directions. The R34 still blocked at multiple locations between Ndundulu and Mpangeni. There is a bit of movement, but there are still some motorists that are stuck in some protest-related blockage areas. Travel later between Melmoth and Mpangeni has been the advice this morning. And Cape Town, a crash on the N2 into town at Mowbray Main Road. The N2 running in stays heavy from the airport area. And what we're seeing this morning is motorists in big numbers ducking off the N1 towards the flooded section at Sable Road and just clogging up all the alternative routes. Routes like Plattercliff Road and Kilbasson, Edgemead Drive, Bosmansdam Road, Voortrekker, Frans Conradi, Viking. They're all heavy with diverting pressures, and particularly so the N7. There's some very heavy traffic from Plattercliff Road going south, from Goodwood going north. Big backlogs into a very congested Bosmansdam Road bridge system. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Explore the family drama and legacy of one of the most powerful royal families in South Africa, the Mukwebos. This is Mubango, 30 Years of Democracy, Season 1 and Season 2. See how it all began, from when a king suddenly dies, leaving behind 2 wives, one from a customary marriage and the other from a civil union, coming full circle to the coronation of one of his sons. Mubango Season 1 and Season 2, Monday to Friday, 9 p.m. on SABC2. You belong.
Individual brilliance meets the power of teamwork. Big ups to the South African men's rowing team for their marvelous performance. Gold was delivered in a glittering fashion at the Olympic Games London 2012. South Africa's James Thompson, Matthew Britton, John Smith, and Lawrence Ndlovu made history as the first crew ever to win Olympic gold in rowing from Mzansi, Africa. And the first Olympic gold in the sport for the African continent. Africa, rise! Magical moments of the Olympics. Brought to you by SABC Sport, proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024.
For the love of the game.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
25 minutes now to 9 the time. Time for your mediated conversation this morning. Over the last 2 years, there's been a big debate in our society about the use of crime wardens in Gauteng to reduce crime. As you know, they've often been called amapanyaza. But for many, many years, much longer than that, there's been a system of police reservists where thousands of people have given their time to the SAPS, usually for free, for nothing. You will remember a few weeks ago, we actually took a call from a reservist who complained they were not being compensated and had even been ordered to report to certain towns and had to travel to those towns. At the same time, it seems the number of police reservists has declined while we need more police officers. Last week, the new police minister, Senator Mchunu, said he wanted to employ 10,000 more police officers. The political party Action SA has said it believes reservists should be the first people to be employed. So then, what is happening with the reservists? Does the system work? Does it make sense to have crime prevention wardens and police reservists? Or do we need to look at the entire system from scratch? First, this morning, the life of being a police reservist. Nomple Mzakelo is a reservist, describes herself also as a reservist activist, someone who wants a better deal for reservists. Then, from the police, the national spokesperson for the South African Police Service is Atlenda Mate. And finally, the independent researcher in policing, crime and criminal justice and a consultant at the Institute for Security Studies, David Bruce. We start then with the reservist, Nomple Mzakelo. Nomple, good morning and thank you for agreeing to speak to us this morning.
Good morning, sir.
You're a police reservist. What do you do for the police? As a reservist, what role do you play?
I'm a reservist for SAPS for more than 20 years. I'm fighting crime. I'm here on behalf of the reservists. We are so many. So we are fighting crime. We are so loyal. We do everything that SAPS permanent members do. Even the training that the SAPS permanent go to attend, even as we go to attend that training, we arrest, we do everything. We go to court. We work hard for SAPS for a long time without payment.
Do you have a uniform? Do you wear a uniform when you're on duty like other police officers?
Yes. We are wearing uniform. We've got personal numbers. When we are on duty, we are allowed to book even firearms.
Okay, and you can arrest people?
Yes, we arrest people.
And can other police officers give you orders? So would you have a commanding officer who's not a reservist but a police officer who instructs you, who tells you what to do?
Yes. They instructed us what we must do when we are on duty, but we do exactly the same duty that the permanent members doing on duty.
Okay. You've been doing it for a long time, Nomple. Why do you do it? You've been doing this for a very long time. Why do you do it? Do you see it as a service to your community?
Yes, I'm doing this for a long time because I don't like crime. And by the time I was joining SAPS, I found that the crime was too high in my area. And then I decided to fight the crime for my area. I like this job.
Okay. How often do reservists work? I mean, how often are you working? How often are other reservists that you know working for the police? I mean, how many hours a week?
They said we must work for 2 days to 3 days per month so that we can submit 24 hours per month. But they always call us to be on duty because there's a lack and a shortage of the police in our police stations.
Okay, and people would have another job as well, most of them.
The others, they have other jobs, but most of us, we don't have jobs because we committed ourselves in SAPS fighting for crime in South Africa.
Okay, do you get anything in return? Do you get paid?
There's nothing we get. They said we are doing this for voluntary. So they give us payment when there is a call-up. The call-up is sometimes it will be when the crime is high, sometimes like when it's festive. So they said they do a call-up for us, and then in call-up we just claim 3 to 4 days a month. Maybe sometimes it takes just 2 months or 3.
And if you have to go to another area, so if you live in one town and you have to go to another town, they would pay you for that call-up there?
No.
Okay. All right. Okay. I think I see where you are. Do you always police the same community? Are you always working in the same place, or are you asked to move around? Do you have to go to other people?
We move around. We do roadblocks. We're just moving around the province.
Okay. It looks like the police are going to employ another 10,000 police officers. Is that a job you would want to apply for?
Yes, we always apply because they said we must apply as the community members. So that is the problem that we've got.
And when you apply, do reservists get the job or not?
We don't get a job. They said we face tests. Some of us fail PM or whatever. They do us a training as the community members. They do. Whereas we've got more experience about SAPS. Some of us have got more experience, even more than the permanent members. The permanent members sometimes can ask to you how to open the docket.
Okay. Nomplem Zakelo, thank you very much indeed. A police reservist, as you can hear, knows the system, also acting as an activist for some of these police reservists. 19 minutes now to 9. Let's hear the other side of this new mediated conversation this morning. Atlenda Mate is the national spokesperson for the South African Police Service. Atlenda, good morning, and thanks very much for your time.
A very good morning to you and to the participants in the conversation, as well as your listeners.
If I remember correctly, the police have had reservists, for decades, right? We're going back long before 1990.
Absolutely.
What role are reservists supposed to play? How's it supposed to work?
Okay. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. You're quite right. We've had the reservist policy system as far back as more than 30 years ago. And the role of the and responsibilities of the reservist. Let me firstly indicate that as a reservist in the SAPS, it's a voluntary service, and we make it quite clear. We get into an agreement, they sign an undertaking, and there is an agreement between the SAPS and the reservist that it is a voluntary service, and their functions differ. They've got policing functions, we've got support functions, we've got expert functions, and so on. So initially, when this policy was established, it was purely for those community members that want to assist the police in fighting crime on a voluntary service. But over the years, we are quite encouraged that we have, since 2011, permanently employed 16,000 reservists they've been translated into constables. They are now fully fledged police officers that are working at various units within the SAPS, but it is those that conform to the requirements of being a permanent police officer. But if I can also add, I know that there is a recommendation, there is a review of the policy that is sitting on the National Commissioner's table, because as it stands, benchmarking with other countries and looking at the system and how it's working in South Africa, we have picked up a lot of gaps, a lot of challenges that are posing challenges within the reserve system. So that's where we are as a service. We are reviewing the system because we have identified challenges within.
Okay. There are a couple of other facts I just want to get on the table, but I appreciate the fact that there is a review, and that's important to know. There was a time when there were thousands of reservists. The last figure I saw, I think it was in reply to a parliamentary question about a year ago, is that there are just over 3,000 reservists now. Is that true? Has the number really declined that much?
It has declined, and like I've indicated, Stephen, majority of them have been permanently employed within the SAPS, and I think it's quite important to highlight that, the reservist system is a voluntary system, but when a person has to then be permanently employed, they have to go through the necessary processes, recruitment processes. They need to be physically fit. They go through the normal process that a person would go through when they have to be permanently employed in the SAPS. So they would go through your psychometric, your integrity testing. They go through your physical fitness assessments and so on. There are health checks. We get medical experts to get involved and so on. But sadly, we find that most of the, not most, because I indicated that 16,000 have been permanently employed, some of them do not conform to the requirements. And that is the question that is the matter that is on the National Commissioner's table, to say, if they do not conform to be permanently employed within the SAPS, then why do we still have reservists? Because the majority of them are trained to perform policing functions, but under the supervision of a trained police official. So like I've indicated, we have identified those gaps and those challenges, and that is where we are. The report is on the table, and we are currently reviewing the whole system on whether it's working or not. We've been to countries such as Botswana, we've been to London and so on, where we went to benchmark. And in those countries, they do not have reservists and so on, because it poses a risk and a threat to the policing functions and so on. But I think it's also important to highlight that the reservists do assist us a lot. They do great work, and I'd like to also take this opportunity to thank the woman that you are speaking to for her 20 years of service and so on. I wouldn't know the circumstances around why she has not been permanently employed. I would have to get into her individual profile and so on, but they do great work. It's just unfortunate that it does pose, we did identify gaps, and over the years we've seen the emergence of your community police forums that are also assisting the work of the police. We've got community patrollers, we are working closely with the private security. So the question is it still the reservist policy system? Do we scrap it out entirely, or do we look at reviewing the policy and ensuring that it conforms to where we find ourselves as an organization, as a country?
So, Atlanta, just to clarify, a police reservist has the power to arrest someone, and a normal police officer has the power to arrest someone, but not every reservist, from what you say, would qualify to be a police officer full-time, is basically the issue.
And that is where we are picking up the gaps and the challenges there, because the National Commissioner is raising that. But if they do not conform to be permanent and fully fleshed police officers, how are they then still assisting? But I can assure you that our reservists are trained. We do have a reservist training program where they are taken through the admin functions, the community service center functions, that are taken through crime prevention, and some of them are even trained in firearm principles and the use of firearms. It's quite important as well to highlight that each and every reservist is always under the supervision of a member. So in the first year, they would be deployed to our community service centers where they would perform your admin functions alone. And once the supervisor that is assigned to the reservist is quite confident that they are ready to go out and they have passed all the courses that they needed to ensure that they're competent in, they will then be assigned to members, crime prevention officers, and they will then assist and so on. So, but that is where we are as an organization as well, identifying to say, but how then do you still keep people, if you are saying they do not conform and they do not meet the requirements to be fully fleshed police officers, but you're utilizing them to assist police. So that's where we are as an organization currently, Stephen.
Okay, so that all then makes sense. I realize also, when just to go back a little bit, for a reservist, they don't get a salary, right? Do they get an allowance if they're called up? They have a personal number, and I just want to understand that a personal number is a sort of personnel number in the government payment system. Why would they have a personal number? What's that for?
Look, the reservists, like I've indicated, is a voluntary service and so on. But because they are trained as police, as reservists rather, they do get access to our uniforms, our firearms, like I've indicated. So we need to account. It's a matter of accountability and so on. But like I've indicated, the process is strictly monitored. It is strictly monitored, but to ensure that they do get remuneration, like I've indicated, they sign an undertaking. They are well aware that it's a voluntary service. But when they are called up, where there are major events, where there are projects, special projects, they are then remunerated accordingly to the hours that they have worked. And I think it's important to also highlight that they are only required to work 16 hours a month at the police station for them to be, to perform their functions as reservists and so on.
Linda Matep, thank you very much indeed. National spokesperson for the South African Police Service. In a moment, is the system working? There's a review. What should the review look at? Maybe removing the whole system of reservists and replacing them with something new. We'll hear from the expert David Bruce. You're with SAFM 10 minutes to 9.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Reminder of the fatal crash on the N14 heading in towards Pretoria. It's happened just before Jean Avenue. It will be there for a while. It is a heavy backlog from the N1. If you don't fancy it, you can come off and Brakfontein, take the N1 off at Boerta Avenue or the R21. Those routes are open and flowing. It'll get you through to Pretoria quicker. N12 R24 reaching to clearly stay busy. An earlier crash on the R24 coming onto the N12 scene has been cleared. A reminder just to travel a bit later today between Melmoth and Mpangeni. SAPS are on scene dealing with the last of the protesting, but there are still some blockages along that route. Durban's M4 running north, a crash near Virginia Airport. That is still slow up on your way to Umhlanga. Breakdown at Pavilion Mall heading away from Spaghetti Junction out to Pinetown is busy. And Cape Town still relentlessly badly backed up on routes that sort of run alternative to the N1. So the N1 with the flooding at Sable Road. Motorists that went through it yesterday on the Monday morning peak hour conditions, a bit shy to go and do it again. So have been hitting some alternative routes. And routes like Plattekloof, Gill, Basson, Bosmansdam Road Edgemead Drive, Franz Conradi, Monte Vista Boulevard, Ford Trekker Road. All of those routes are super heavily backed up as the alternatives. The N7 from Goodwood to Bosmansdam's heavy. The N7 Platterkloof down to Bosmansdam heavy as well. And there's a lot of traffic. I'm sure it's probably related with motorists wanting to stay away from that area. But even out of Tableview at this hour, there's still some really heavy traffic on Marine Drive from the West Coast Road through Sunset Beach, and also the Coburg Road from the refinery down to Montague Drive. Very busy. A lot of traffic delays. Probably give yourself about an hour extra to get through that traffic. Also a crash on the N2 into Cape Town at Mowbray, Maine. So the traffic coming through from the airport remains heavy on the run through to Hospital Bends. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Every year, 30,000 missionaries are called to serve the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints across the globe, the largest full-time missionary force of any church. Most are under 25 and away from home for up to 2 years, and the biggest training center in Europe is located in Chorley, Lancashire. The Mormons Are Coming follows the journey of 3 young missionaries through the first few months of training and work in the field, which can make or break them. Tune into The Mormons Are Coming, Thursdays at 10 p.m. Channel your best dockies with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
7 minutes now to 9. The time continue a mediated conversation around the system of police reservists. David Bruce is an independent researcher in policing, crime and criminal justice and a consultant at the Institute for Security Studies. David, good morning.
Good morning.
So we have reservists, we have crime prevention wardens, we have normal police officers. We also have, as we've just heard, a review that is underway. Do these systems of reservists that has run for a long time, is it really working in the way it's supposed to, or do we actually need this review and maybe, who knows, maybe abolish the system altogether?
Right. Well, I think that you're asking quite a big question because there's a question in South Africa at the moment about the resourcing of the SAPS itself and what kind of capacity, SAPS capacity, South African society can sustain, and what kind of SAPS capacity South African society needs. And alongside that, there's a question about what kind of recruitment strategy the SAPS should pursue. So, for instance, the ISS recently published a set of recommendations on policing, where the ISS recommended that there should be much more of a focus on recruitment for skill, so that there's, for instance, several types of quite specialized skills that the SAPS should preferably be able to operationalize. And currently, for instance, the system is orientated to the recruitment of matriculants and isn't necessarily securing the right kind of skills for the SAPS. So there's some quite broad questions, and broadly my approach is to see it as that we need to have the SAPS as an organization, and potentially the SAPS itself would be a professional policing organization with some kind of specialized skills, and then alongside that we would have some kind of what I use the term auxiliary policing system. And exactly how one thinks of the auxiliary policing system is quite an intricate question. So, for instance, the private security system might be seen as part of a type of auxiliary policing system, and so on. Police reservists, crime prevention wardens, traffic police, voluntary patrol systems, all of these, depending on how one wants to define the system, can be seen as parts of forms of type of auxiliary policing.
We have reservists who don't get paid and yet give their time. Hard to assess the contribution they've made. Many of them, as we now know, have been absorbed into the main police service. And presumably they arrive with experience. So they very much had a head start and were probably able to get going to it. But I wonder if there's really a need for a sort of part-time police service of people who receive nothing in exchange. And yet, when you look at, and I know that the KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner, Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, made this point yesterday. He said there's a culture in KZN of people creating their own neighborhood watches and patrolling with sort of sjamboks. Those weren't quite his words, but he was making that point. It would be better to have people who do respond to the discipline of the police, so they're accountable to the discipline of the police, than ordinary community members. Would that be right?
Absolutely. So, again, to refer to the ISS's recommendations, that what the ISS was arguing was that the question of the relationship between the SAPS and these auxiliary types of policing systems needs to receive more attention. There needs to be, a better approach to how these various types of policing systems are coordinated.
This review will probably take a little while. It seems to me that there will always be an expectation in South Africa, because unemployment is so high, that people who volunteer at some point may think they have a legitimate expectation. I don't think they're wrong in this necessarily, that they should be first in line if a job is suddenly available. And there does seem to be a distinction between police reservists who have the power to arrest, as a police officer does, but don't really qualify to be a police officer full-time. And in that gap, I think there's going to be arguments and contestation and disappointment. Is that something that needs to be managed quite carefully? Because you're saying to people, give us your time for free, but you'll never become a police officer.
Right. Well, you see, I mean, I would want to emphasize that participation in the reservists has to be separated from the expectation that one is entitled to employment in the SAPS. There's the reservist system is, in principle, a voluntary system, and my understanding is that it basically can't work if people who are recruited as reservists have an expectation that they can get SAPS employment. But as you've said, it's one thing to establish voluntary systems. A similar issue has unfolded in relation to community police forums themselves, the question of resourcing of community police forums. So it's easy to say these kinds of things, but particularly in poorer communities, even people who are dedicated and committed to serving their communities as volunteers, have real difficulty, might have real difficulty sustaining themselves and so on. And so, these are questions that it isn't really going to be possible for us to avoid.
David Bruce, thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate the time. Independent researcher in policing, crime and criminal justice and consultant at the Institute for Security Studies. My thanks to Linda Mate, the national spokesperson for the SAPS, and starting us off today, Nomplum Zakhelo, the reservist activist. Really do appreciate the time. We will be back with you tomorrow. Plenty to come. Kathy is next from Du, Stanza, Zelma, Amandla, Melissa, myself. Look after yourself. You're this FM leading the conversation. Good morning. It's 9 o'clock.
In our top stories, union concerned over looming job losses at Amplats, and DA launches urgent interdict against Hlophe's election to JSC. Good morning. The National Union of Mine Workers, NUM, has expressed concern over looming job cuts at mining giant Anglo-American Platinum, Amplats. This after Amplats finalized its retrenchment process, with 3,700 jobs expected to be affected across its operations in South Africa. The retrenchments are reportedly a result of the company's efforts to mitigate the financial impact of declining platinum group metal prices, which have significantly squeezed profit margins. The job cuts account for about 17% of Amplats' workforce, with the most significant impact at Amandelbult in Limpopo. Katu Ramufufi is NUM's regional coordinator at Anglo-American Platinum in Polokwane.
As NUM, we are very worried about the impact of these job losses, because our view is that one job loss is one too many, because the job losses do not only impact on the employees retrenched, they've got a wider impact on the larger society, on the larger economy.
The ANC's disciplinary hearing against former party President Jacob Zuma is expected to resume today on a virtual platform. Zuma has been charged under Rule 25 of the ANC's constitution for endorsing the MK party ahead of the May general elections. Proceedings against Zuma were postponed last week so that outcomes of the hearing could be communicated to him by his representative and former ANC NEC member Tony Yengeni. Sibatle Mota reports.
Zuma, who is being represented by former ANC NEC member Tony Yengeni, has argued that the hearing against him should be held in person. The former ANC president states that the provisions of the ANC constitution allow him to appear before the National Disciplinary Committee in person. Zuma has also requested that the hearing should be made public, a request that has been vehemently rejected by the party. The ANC maintains that the disciplinary hearing against the MK leader will neither be held in person nor be made public. I am Sibahle Mota in Johannesburg.
The DA has launched an urgent interdict before the Western Cape High Court against Umkhonto weSizwe parliamentary leader Dr. John Hlophe's designation to the Judicial Service Commission. The party is one of several that objected to Hlophe's election to the JSC, while the ANC and EFF are among those who voted in favour of the move. The JSC is scheduled to sit in October to interview and make recommendations to President Cyril Ramaphosa on who to appoint, including Hlophe's previous position as Judge President of the Western Cape Division. Zoleka Kodashe reports.
The DA's application is in two parts. Part A seeks an urgent interdict against Hlophe from taking up a seat in the JSC, while Part B is a review application seeking to set aside the decision of the National Assembly to designate Hlophe as a representative at the JSC. The party argues that Hlophe's participation in the JSC would render any recommendation it makes to the president as unlawful and undermine the integrity of the body. It therefore seeks to prevent Hlophe from serving on the JSC until the legality of his election to the commission is determined by the court.
A 24-year-old man arrested in connection with the shooting of 3 college students in Barberton and Mpumalanga is expected to appear in court this morning. The suspect allegedly shot and killed a 23-year-old engineering student and injured 2 others during a Freshers' Ball event at the college last weekend. This after the suspect was allegedly denied entry into the event as he was not a student. He will appear before the Barberton Magistrates Court on a charge of murder and 2 counts of attempted murder. Further afield, and finally, the founder of the South Korean tech giant Kakao has been arrested on charges of manipulating stock prices related to its takeover of the K-pop agency SM Entertainment last year. Brian Kim has denied the accusations, saying he never instructed or condoned any illegal acts. The BBC's Jane Mackenzie has the details.
Kakao's messaging app and payment system are intrinsic to South Korean life. Almost all Koreans have the app installed on their phones. Last year, in an attempt to expand into the world of K-pop, it acquired one of South Korea's biggest entertainment companies, SM Entertainment. In doing so, it's been accused of inflating the company's stock price to stop a competitor from buying the business. This morning, Kakao's billionaire founder was arrested and taken into custody. He'll be held for up to 20 days while the authorities decide whether or not to formally charge him.
Recapping the top story, the National Union of Mine Workers has expressed concerns over looming job cuts at mining giant Anglo American Platinum. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Nelson Mandela once said,
"It is in your hands to create a better world for all who live in it."
SAFM urges you to identify those in need around you and to do what you can to make a difference to them. Tata Mandela went further to say, what counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we led. SAFM celebrates Mandela Month.
The Talking Point with Kathy Motlatlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
I read a really screaming headline recently that said, greed is good. Oh, really? I do not think so. Greed is the spark that leads to financial forest fires that blaze unchecked until all in its path is consumed. There is a need for greater regulation to protect the lives and livelihoods of millions of people from predatory practices of speculators. But more than ever, there is a need for strong ethical and governance standards in financial institutions and corporations. The drive for high risk-adjusted returns should not lead to moral hazards that put at risk the lives and livelihoods of people. It is not just about growth or competitiveness. It should be about security and stability. Integrity. Integrity is about honesty, transparency, authenticity, and trustworthiness. The famous investor, Warren Buffett, once said, and I quote him, "In looking for people to hire, look for three qualities: integrity, intelligence, and energy. And if you don't have the first, the other two will kill you." Intelligence and energy without integrity is a disaster. It is integrity that will keep you successful and make the world a better place. Integrity is a currency you will spend throughout life. Do not squander it. Lose your integrity, and all you will have left is nothing but emptiness.
Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, the 8th elected president of the African Development Bank Group. Welcome to the Talking Point. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to have you with us on the show this morning. It's 9:09, and I'm Kathy Motlatlana with you until midday, steering the ship until midday, and looking forward to being in your company. Coming up on the show, of course, we'll start with the open line. As we always do, it is your national roundtable and your opportunity, of course, to raise whatever matters of